Hey guys and welcome back to my channel. This is part 2 of what Naruto was taken in at a young age by Kakashi. Before we begin, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and also go and support the author, link in description. Back in Konoha, Naruto made a very careful list of things he wanted to study for the matches. However, the majority of them relied on outside help he was not guaranteed of getting. He came home to find Kakashi had left a note for him. Ototo, I have heard rumors of Jiraiya being back in town. I would highly suggest seeking him out for training. He can usually be spotted around women's hot springs. Congratulations again on making it to the main matches. Your Nissan. Naruto's eyes lit up. Jiraiya should be able to help him immensely with his training, assuming he found him. Naruto resolved to hunt the man down tomorrow, but for now, he needed sleep. Next morning, 9:30 a.m. Naruto had dropped by Training Area 19 to tell his teammates as well as Kurenai that he was going to go hunt down Jiraiya for training, who was rumored to be in town. Kurenai rubbed her temples. Remind me not to go to the bathhouses until he's gone. All three students looked at her with raised eyebrows. You'll see what I mean when you find him, Naruto. When Kakashi said around, he meant around. Naruto nodded as he said goodbye to his team, promising to come back for visits when he could. He set off to Konoha's only hot springs, and went to the women's section, but instead of going inside, he took a detour around the outside, soon enough spotting a man peeking into the women's baths, giggling and scribbling notes onto a notepad. Naruto concealed his chakra and then snuck up on Jiraiya, before letting the chakra mask go, shocking the hell out of the Sannin. Jiraiya turned around to see a boy with sun-kissed blonde hair smiling lazily at him. What do you want, Gaki? Supervise my training. Jiraiya processed this for a second before he turned back to his research. Yeah right kid, do you even know who I am? Naruto smiled lazily at Jiraiya. My Otusan-sensei. This made Jiraiya's head whip around so fast that Naruto was amazed it hadn't fallen off. What did you say? I said you were my father's sensei. Jiraiya's eyes narrowed. That's not funny, Gaki. Neither is the fact you disappeared from my life almost 13 years ago. Now that got Jiraiya's attention. His eyes narrowed before realization hit him when Naruto opened his eyes to reveal those sapphire blue orbs Jiraiya had known for so long. Coupled with the sun-kissed blonde hair, there was only one person this could be. Naruto. Naruto smiled again. Yup. Jiraiya wasn't sure about what to do. He'd been told that Naruto had died on the day of his birth, yet here he was, standing in front of him in the flesh, very real. Naruto saw the myriad of emotions wash over Jiraiya's face. Disbelief, confusion, anger, and finally, happiness. Jiraiya smiled at Naruto. Sorry about leaving you. I was told you died on the day of your birth. I took leave of Konoha because I had nothing left there for me. So, how's your life been? Naruto looked thoughtful. The first 4 years were hell. But Kakashi Nissan adopted me after I turned 4, and from them on, life's been pretty good. Jiraiya nodded. Okay, well, I guess I could teach you a few things. However, not here. Jiraiya put his pen and notebook away, leading Naruto somewhere less populated. Outside Konoha. Jiraiya had led Naruto to a waterfall not too far from the west gate of Konoha. Once they arrived, Jiraiya turned to Naruto. So, tell me what you can do. Naruto nodded. Well, after Kakashi Nissan adopted me, I got training from the 4 Junin specialists. I learned from them for 7 years. I can open 3 celestial gates. My Nin, Gen, Tai, Arm Tai and Fuinjutsu are all extremely accomplished for my age, and I have 3 elemental affinities which are fire, lightning and wind. I graduated from the academy with a perfect record. I have 8 D-class missions, an A-class that was disguised as a C-class and an ongoing S-class. The only thing I have no skill in is bloodline jutsus, but then again, I've never been taught one. Naruto became aware that Jiraiya's jaw was hanging down. Naruto looked at him in a bored fashion. Something wrong. Jiraiya closed his mouth and shook his head. No, I assume since you know about Arashi, you know about Kyuubi. Naruto nodded. Jiraiya though for a moment. How would you like to learn some bloodline jutsus? Naruto's eyes lit up and he nodded. We'll start you off with a relatively simple one. It's not so much a bloodline jutsu, as a jutsu handed down from student to pupil. The Kuchio's no jutsu. Naruto nodded. Which species is the contract with? The frogs. Naruto nodded. He'd heard about one of the other Sannin summoning slugs, so frogs couldn't be too bad. Naruto nodded. Sounds good. Jiraiya bit his thumb and formed the seals before summoning an orange frog that had a necklace on, with multiple swirling tattoos on its body. The frog unrolled its tongue and gave Naruto the summoning scroll. Naruto opened it to see several names in some sort of very traditional Japanese which he couldn't read. Naruto looked 2 spaces back from the one he would use and saw the name of Jiraiya there. The one closest to Naruto's spot had the name of Kazama Arashi. Naruto smiled sadly at this before he bit his thumb, writing his name with his blood before leaving his fingerprints before standing up, looking at Jiraiya. Seals. Boar, dog, bird, monkey, ram. Remember to bite your thumb before the seals. Naruto nodded. He decided to start off with something small, so he bit his thumb and formed the seals. Kuchio's no jutsu. Naruto slammed his palm onto the ground and when the smoke cleared, there was a small orange frog with some tattoos on it and a navy blue GI. The frog looked up at him. Who are you? Never seen you before. Naruto smiled at the frog. Name's Uzumaki Naruto. Gamakichi. If you want to play, give me a snack. Naruto smiled as he pulled out a scroll and pulled a packet of chips out of one of the seals, opening it and handing it to the frog. The frog looked up at Naruto. When I said a snack, you didn't have to give me a packet of them. Still, you seem like a nice guy. Catch you round, Naruto. Gamakichi took the chips and poofed out of existence. Naruto decided to try something bigger, so he bit his thumb and started forming the seals. With the amount of chakra Naruto was channeling, Jiraiya warily stepped back. Naruto slammed his palm onto the ground. Kuchio's no jutsu. The entire area was covered in smoke and Naruto found himself on top of one very big frog. The frog had a scar running over its left eyelid. He had a navy blue GI with a sword strapped to his side. Naruto looked at the frog, and the frog looked at him. What are you doing on my head, Gaki? Where's Jiraiya? Naruto looked lazily at him. I'm on your head because I summoned you. As for Jiraiya, he's down there somewhere. Gamabunta narrowed his eyes at Naruto before he burst out laughing. You summon me, the great Gamabunta-sama. Dream on, Gaki. Naruto smiled lazily at him. He knew how to deal with arrogant people like this. You're pretty stupid for a summon boss. The frog's eyes narrowed again at Naruto. Nanjato, do you have any idea who you're talking to, Gaki? Yup, someone who was unable to accept the fact that I summoned you. If you don't believe me, how about we make a bet to prove it? The frog smiled. A bet? What are the conditions? You have to do your best to throw me off your head by sunset. If you do, I'll accept your judgment on whether I summoned you or not. And if you win, you will allow me to summon you when I need to and you will listen to my orders. That's stupid. Afraid you'll lose. After having his credibility doubted like that, he decided to prove just how weak this kid was. Fine. Don't blame me when you die, Gaki. Gamabunta proceeded to try and get Naruto off his head in every way he could. He shook his head from side to side, jumping up and down, going underwater, resurfacing and taking a leap before resubmerging. This lasted for hours until the sun finally set. Naruto looked down at Gamabunta, trying just managed to hide his exhaustion. I win, Gamabunta. Gamabunta had to admit, this kid was good. He wasn't your average kid. He looked up at him. Fine, I'll listen to you and you can summon me whenever you want. Don't let it go to your head, Naruto. Naruto nodded and hopped down and Gamabunta disappeared. Jiraiya came out and looked at Naruto. Naruto, we're done for the day. Come back here same time tomorrow. Sure thing. Naruto walked off as Jiraiya went back to his research. Next morning, 10 a.m. Naruto had come back to the waterfall and spotted Jiraiya giggling as he peeked through some bushes. Naruto looked at him. I know you're a super pervert, but why do you peek whenever you get the opportunity? Jiraiya turned around. It gives me inspiration for my stories. Naruto didn't like this, not one bit. Stories. You wouldn't happen to be the author of. Naruto's question was answered when Jiraiya removed an all too familiar orange book from his clothes. Naruto's sweat dropped. I knew it. Jiraiya perked up at the Naruto's reaction. Oh, you've heard of this book. Naruto shook his head. Heard isn't the right word. My Nisan is always reading those damn things. Jiraiya let out a restrained perverted giggle at the reaction. Seems I'm getting pretty famous. Naruto watched as Jiraiya put the book away and put on his business face. Naruto, today I'm going to teach you a jutsu that was invented by the Yondaime. The Rasengan. Naruto's eyebrows raised at this. Naruto had heard tales from Kakashi about the Rasengan. Jiraiya pulled out a water balloon from one of two large shopping bags that he had with him and filled it with water before holding it out in front of him. Okay, the first stage. Basically, you have to try and pop this balloon using only chakra. It combines the principle of the tree climbing exercise, which I'm sure you've done, with the principle of the water walking exercise. Watch. The balloon started stretching out at odd angles, as if something was struggling to get out. Finally, the balloon popped water going everywhere. Naruto looked on, trying to analyze what had just happened. To further explain it, like with the tree climbing exercise, you must maintain a constant amount of chakra by focusing your mind and keeping that concentration. With the water walking exercise, you were taught to release a fixed amount of chakra continuously. So, to do the first step of the Rasengan training, you have to combine those two exercises by creating a continuous flow, and once you have released it, control it. Anyways, I'll leave you to figure out how to apply it. Good luck, Naruto. Jiraiya had given Naruto another filled water balloon and turned around when he heard the balloon pop. He stopped and slowly turned around to see that the balloon had indeed popped. Naruto smiled lazily. How long did Arashi take to make this jutsu again? Jiraiya didn't believe it. Naruto had just popped the balloon first try. Naruto looked at Jiraiya. The theory behind it is easy. I have very good chakra control. Adding several directions of chakra spin to the balloon isn't hard. Jiraiya nodded slowly as he pulled out a pair of rubber balls from the other bag. Jiraiya passed one to Naruto. For stage 2, you have to use 100% of your power to pop the rubber ball. Jiraiya demonstrated this as the rubber ball mutated hideously before exploding. Naruto raised an eyebrow. He held his ball and concentrated before the ball morphed hideously and then exploded, sending rocks and sand flying. Naruto smiled at Jiraiya, whose sweat dropped. This kid was scary. Jiraiya took out an empty water balloon and filled it up with air before sealing it. He threw it to Naruto and made another for himself. The third stage requires you to use all of the power from the second step and add the rotation from the first step. To successfully complete this level, you have to maintain the Rasengan without the balloon popping. Naruto nodded and concentrated. Jiraiya could sense that the Naruto had formed the Rasengan, and was maintaining it perfectly. Jiraiya felt ashamed. It had taken him 1.5 months to learn the Rasengan, and Naruto had learnt all 3 steps in 3 goes. Naruto hadn't even broken a sweat. Naruto looked at Jiraiya. 3 years. I assume he spent the majority of that time doing something else. Jiraiya sighed. Arashi had only been inventing the Rasengan part-time during those 3 years, but he had definitely not done it first try. Jiraiya had expected this to take up a good chunk of the time between now and the main matches of the Chunin exams. Arashi, you created a genius, didn't you? Jiraiya was fast running out of options. He decided to teach Naruto Swamp of the Underworld. Naruto, how do you think you can handle a Doden jutsu I invented? Naruto raised an eyebrow. I don't have much skill for Doden jutsus, but I can try. Jiraiya nodded. This should hold him off for a while. It's called Doden. Yomi Numa. Seals are boar and tiger. Give it a try. Naruto nodded and formed the 2 seals, announcing the jutsu. Doden. Yomi Numa. The ground in a 30-meter diameter area darkened in color before turning into a clay-brown colored liquid. Jiraiya smiled. It was going to be a long time until he mastered this one. Jiraiya watch over Naruto part of the day, spending the other part, researching. By the end of the day, Naruto had extended the swamp to 50 meters in diameter. As the final rays of sunlight diffusing through the atmosphere's many layers, which is usually associated with the red of a sunset or sunrise, turned a deep crimson, Jiraiya got up. Naruto, I'm going to get some rest. You coming? Naruto looked up, sweating and panting. I'll stay at this for several more hours. Same time. Jiraiya nodded. Don't push yourself too hard. Naruto smiled lazily at Jiraiya. If I don't push myself to my limits, I can never improve. I'll see you tomorrow. Jiraiya nodded. He's even got your guts, Arashi. This kid's going surpass even you. After another several hours which resulted in expanding the swamp by another few meters, Naruto noticed that the stars were out and the moon was hanging low in the sky. Naruto stretched and headed back to his apartment, dead tired from today's workout. When he got back, he had a short shower and crashed into bed. A week later. By the end of the following week, Naruto had increased the diameter of the swamp to several hundred meters and to a depth of about 100 meters. Jiraiya admitted Naruto had satisfactory mastery over the jutsu and started to teach him the basics of Yondaimi's modified Shushin no Jutsu. After several hours of explaining, Naruto tried it. He partially achieved it, however. Naruto was still partially disappearing with a regular burst of speed, but the barest flicker of yellow was seen when he activated and deactivated it. Naruto kept training for the rest of the day and well into the night after Jiraiya had left. By the end of the week, Naruto could do it to Jiraiya's satisfaction. Jiraiya had one jutsu that would help Naruto immensely. Naruto, I'm going to teach you one more jutsu and then introduce you to another one, which I will leave you to learn. This jutsu is called Hari Jizu. The reason I'm teaching you this is because your hair is long enough for it. To do it, just channel chakra to the roots of your hair and force it to grow into a hardened shield of spikes that will protect you from most taijutsu attacks. This is how it's done. Jiraiya formed a half-ram seal and his hair exploded out in all directions, covering him in a way a hedgehog or echidna would if they rolled up into a ball. Naruto tried it and his hair slowly grew at first until he pumped more chakra into and his hair encased him in a shield much like Jiraiya's except blonde instead of white. Naruto let the jutsu go and looked at Jiraiya who smiled at him. You're something else, Naruto. I don't have the implements here to teach you the final jutsu. Meet here tomorrow one last time and I'll give you something that enabled your dad to do the Hiraishin. Naruto nodded and smiled. Catch you round. Jiraiya nodded and went back to his research, leaving Naruto with a free day. He decided to go and meet up with his team. Training Ground 19. Kurenai was teaching both Choji and Shikamaru some theory behind some genjutsu or another when Naruto walked up to them. They greeted him and after some small chat, Naruto asked how things were going with their training. Shikamaru looked up at the clouds. It's troublesome, but I'm starting to learn a few genjutsu as well as another Nara clan jutsu. Naruto nodded. Choji smiled at Naruto. I'm really not that good with genjutsu, but I'm learning the next Akamichi clan jutsu. Naruto nodded as Kurenai looked at him. So, what have you learned from Jiraiya, Naruto? Naruto smiled at her. The only area I had nothing in. Bloodline jutsus. All three of their eyes widened. Naruto explained. I've signed a summon contract that both Jiraiya and my dad signed. I've also learned 2 jutsus that my dad created and another 2 Jiraiya created. Tomorrow, I'm to learn a jutsu that earned my dad his name as the Yellow Flash of Konoha. At the last part, their eyes widened considerably. Hiraishin. Naruto nodded. I won't have it ready in time for the exam though. Shikamaru sighed. Mendokusei. Despite the fact that in the upcoming exam we're opponents, I still think you're friends before that. I need to speak to Nisan though, so I'll catch you round. They waved goodbye to Naruto as he left the training field and headed to his apartment. Naruto's apartment. Naruto got home to see Kakashi taking a snooze in the chair. When Kakashi heard the door open, he looked up. Hey Naruto, you're back early. Naruto shrugged. Jiraiya's not going to teach me anything until tomorrow. Kakashi nodded. So, want some help? Naruto nodded. Is it possible for a person to sign more than one summoning contract? Kakashi raised an eyebrow. There's no strict rule against it, however, it's not common practice. I take it you signed the contract with the Toads. Naruto nodded. Well, I have no qualms about letting you sign the canine contract, however, it's up to them to accept you. Naruto nodded as Kakashi led Naruto outside to the enclosed garden of the apartments, which was really nothing more than a square patch of lawn. Kakashi bit his thumb and formed the seals. Kuchio's no jutsu. The smoke cleared and a fairly large dog was there. He wore a navy blue gi and wore sunglasses as well as a Konoha Hitai 8. The dog dropped the scroll and Kakashi opened it. Naruto didn't recognize any other names apart from Kakashi. Naruto bit his thumb and signed his name next to Kakashi's, ending in his fingerprints. Naruto realized his problem. If he summoned the boss of the canines here, he'd destroy several of the apartment complexes. So he looked to Kakashi, who smiled. Go summon him where there's a bit more space. Naruto nodded and walked off to a training ground that was usually empty. Today was no different, so he went into the center and bit his thumb, molded a massive amount of chakra and slammed his palm onto the ground. Kuchio's no jutsu. After the smoke cleared, Naruto was looking into the eyes of a rather large wolf with gray fur that had a hint of blue in it. The wolf looked at him. Who are you? You better have a good explanation as to why you're on my head, Gaki. Naruto smiled in his lazy fashion. I summoned you. The wolf narrowed its eyes. It grinned before letting loose a barking laugher. You summon me? Do you expect me to believe that? Naruto's sweat dropped. We're all summon bosses like this. He decided to show this boss just who he was dealing with. I'll prove I summoned you. Naruto jumped off the wolf's head and bit his thumb, forming the seals. Kuchio's no jutsu. A huge cloud of smoke wrapped around the new figure, before revealing Gamabunta. The two summon bosses stared at each other. Naruto smiled at the wolf, however, he was almost completely exhausted of chakra. Summoning two summon bosses was not a feat to be sneezed at. The wolf looked at Gamabunta. Hisashibari Dana, Gamabunta. Indeed it has, Fenrir. Almost 200 years. Let me guess, Naruto summoned me to prove he summoned you. Fenrir smiled in that feral manner that all canines did. I know who summoned me, I just wanted to see if the Gaki was worthy of summoning me. At that point, Naruto fell to his knees, panting and sweating. Fenrir looked at Naruto. I'm amazed a human his age can summon two summon bosses at all, let alone not dying from complete chakra exhaustion. Listen Naruto, canines pride themselves on their loyalty. Remember that, as you humans say, scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. I'll let you summon my pack for now, but until you prove your loyalty, you may not summon me, are we clear? If you do, your signature of the canine contract is void. Naruto nodded. Sure thing. Fenrir poofed out of existence, leaving Naruto with Gamabunta. Gamabunta looked up at Naruto. I'm getting out of here. The kids are waiting for me back home. Naruto nodded and jumped down as Gamabunta raised a webbed hand. Ya. Gamabunta disappeared as Naruto collapsed, panting. Little did Naruto know that there was a very livid Uchiha staring at him from the edge of the training field. Where does Naruto get so much power? Naruto lay there, recovering his chakra for the better part of the day. At about nightfall, Naruto got up and headed home. He really needed to prove his loyalty to the canines. He didn't know when he might need Fenrir's help. Naruto opened the door to see Kakashi smiling at him. I'm sure most of the Junins of Konoha felt that Naruto. No wonder you look like that. I suggest taking it easy for a while. Naruto nodded as he made himself a cup of instant ramen, too tired to make anything fancy. Once he'd eaten it with Kakashi eating his miso soup, Naruto excused himself and took a shower before throwing his clothes into the laundry basket in his room and hit the sack. 2 weeks and 4 days later. It was the day of the Chunin main matches. There were a few clouds in the sky, apart from that, it was a perfect day. Everyone was living the hype usually associated with such a big tournament. People specifically wanted to see how both years' top rookies would do, namely Hyuga Neji and Uzumaki Naruto. People still had some reservations about Naruto, but they would see what he was capable of before passing their final judgment. The examinees walked in through the large gate at ground level and stood facing the stands of people which were packed to capacity. Everyone's favorite Senbon Chewing Junin, Shiranui Genma, stood facing the examinees. You guys are the reason everyone has gathered. Like with the preliminaries, the rules are the same, even if the terrain is different. You will fight each other until one gives up, is unable to fight or dies. Remember, if I decide to stop the match, you will listen to me. They nodded as the Hokage welcomed the crowd. Welcome ladies and gentlemen to the first biannual Chunin exam finals. We will now begin the main matches between the finalists. Please enjoy the show. Genma turned back to the Chunin hopefuls. First match is between Uzumaki Naruto and Inuzuka Kiba. The rest of you, go up to the waiting room until it's your turn. The other 6 left the arena for the waiting room. Kiba smiled at Naruto. It's been a while since we went against each other in anything but a friendly spar, Naruto. Naruto smiled. Yup. Genma made the announcement. Then, first match, Hajime. The crowd roared their approval as the two competitors stood stone still, gauging each other's reactions. After a full minute of tension-filled silence, Kiba smirked and hurled 4 kunai at Naruto, who dodged to the left, letting them impact the wall. Kiba formed a ram seal and used one of his clan jutsus. Gijyu Ninpu. Shikyaku no Jutsu. Kiba's fingernails extended as his chakra morphed his body. Kiba disappeared in a blur of speed and reappeared next to Naruto, engaging in a ferocious taijutsu match. Naruto noticed Kiba's speed had improved dramatically, and Naruto had to block about half the punches and kicks while he dodged the rest. The crowd was captivated as Naruto danced through the air, avoiding Kiba's blows and blocking the ones he couldn't. Kiba knew that by himself, he wasn't going to get anywhere with this, so he disappeared and reappeared next to Akamaru. Akamaru. The dog barked and jumped onto Kiba's back before transforming into a clone of Kiba. Jujin Bunshin. Both of them charged in, reappearing in front of and behind Naruto. Naruto saw his predicament. Blocking one Kiba's blows was hard enough. 2 would be impossible. Before either of them could land a punch, Naruto formed a single-hand seal. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. A lot of the crowd's eyes widened as a perfect copy of Naruto appeared beside him and took on Akamaru while the real Naruto took on Kiba. Naruto was trying to slowly separate the pair, as together, they were a force to be reckoned with. The 4 fighters on the field continued to exchange blows until Akamaru got lucky and punched the clone in the stomach through a hole in the clone's defenses, dispelling it. Akamaru went back to help his master with the real Naruto. Naruto saw his predicament, and just as they were about to land a blow on him, he turned into a flash of yellow light and just vanished. Both Kiba and Akamaru stumbled before gaining their footing to see Naruto reappear with the same yellow flash at the other end of the field. Everyone just stared. Murmurs of "Hiraishin" and "Yellow Flash" could be heard throughout the audience. Kiba looked at Naruto with wide eyes. Wah, what was that? Naruto smiled at Kiba. A modified version of the Shushin no Jutsu unique to Konoha. Kiba tried to regain his senses as both he and Akamaru took out 8 shuriken each. He hurled them at Naruto to prepare for the next attack. Every time I see you, you just get faster, Naruto. Akamaru. Let's go, Gatsuga. Naruto dodged the shuriken as both Kiba and Akamaru turned into gray cyclones as they crisscrossed the field, ripping up the ground as they tried to confuse Naruto where they would attack from. After a few seconds, they broke off and tried to hit Naruto from 2 different directions. Naruto jumped out of the way only to see both of them come at him again while he was still in mid-air, unable to block. I see a weak spot. Both cyclones slammed into Naruto and then broke out as Naruto fell to the ground, not moving. Gotcha. Naruto poofed into a log that had one of the larger varieties of explosive notes attached to it, and Kiba's eyes widened as the note fizzled down to its last part and exploded, sending Kiba and Akamaru flying back into the stadium wall. The impact dispelled Akamaru's henge and they both looked at Naruto, who had reappeared in the middle of the stadium. Kiba grit his teeth from the pain when he decided to use his last resort. Akamaru, we're going to use it. Let's go. Akamaru got up and Kiba charged at Naruto and grabbed onto his arm before Naruto had the chance to move. Now, Akamaru. Akamaru jumped into the air and span, urinating all over the area as Naruto narrowed his eyes. Dogs urinated on things to mark them. Naruto used another kawarimi to replace himself with a log, but still got hit with a small amount of the urine. Dynamic marking. Seiko. Now Akamaru. Jinju Kondi Henge. Sotaro. Both Akamaru and Kiba were surrounded by a cloud of smoke which cleared to reveal a massive white wolf with 2 heads. The wolf had crimson eyes and was salivating like mad. Both heads looked at Naruto and let the hint of a smile touch their lips. Naruto smiled as he did the 2-hand seals for a jutsu. We won't let you. Naruto slammed his palms onto the ground as the white wolf ran at Naruto. Doden. Yomi Noma. The ground of the entire stadium turned into a sea of ochre-red liquid which was like glue. It stopped the double-headed wolf in its tracks as it began sinking. Gah! What is this? Naruto stood up. It's a Doden jutsu. This swamp is about 100 meters deep. The more you struggle, the faster you sink. The wolf smiled. Like quicksand, huh, but did you count on this? Garoga. The wolf began spinning and sending the red liquid everywhere as it turned into a white and blue tornado. Naruto narrowed his eyes, realizing there was only one option left. He muttered, Kai, returning the ground to its original state and bit his thumb and formed the seals. Kuchio's no jutsu. The smoke cleared to reveal a mainly gray frog with an orange back slightly larger than the wolf that wore a green gi and had a very long katana strapped to its back. The frog saw the danger as it pulled the blade off its back and met the attack. The tornado kept going, pushing the frog towards the wall. The wolf jumped back and prepared for another go. If the frog hit the wall, it was over, so Naruto looked at the frog when an idea struck him. Can you give me a short burst of oil? The frog nodded and his cheeks puffed up and Naruto formed 2-hand seals. Kaden. Kyukyoku Gukakyu no Jutsu. Naruto's fireball hit the oil and the arena exploded into flames as the crowd winced at the massive amount of heat the fireball generated, even from their seats. The fireball lasted all of 3 seconds as it washed over the wolf, doing just enough damage to dispel the henge and leave both of them on the ground, suffering from exhaustion, but only minor burns that were easily treatable. Naruto thanked the toad as it left. Naruto walked up to Kiba, who smirked at Naruto. That was clever. I didn't expect you to use any of those jutsus, especially not that last one. So, how do I rate? Naruto smiled. Kiba, that was a great match. You forced me to reveal 3 new jutsus in the first match. I didn't make the fireball last long enough to permanently damage you, as I know when I have to use terminal force. And a match with a close friend, not matter how serious it is not the time to use that sort of power. I expect your family to be proud of you. I am. Good work, my friend. Kiba smiled at the recognition as he passed out. Genma smirked. Shosha. Uzumaki Naruto. The crowd went wild as Naruto walked up to the contestants' box, where he got pats on the back from Choji and Shikamaru, a nod from Shino and Neji and an explosion of youth comment from Lee. Naruto noticed Gaara had a rather manic expression on his face, one of a person who was just restraining himself from lashing out. The rookies and their Junin instructors were not only amazed at Naruto's power, but also in his sense of judgment he showed when dealing with Kiba's very damaging attack. Kurenai was most impressed with Naruto. Naruto, you're growing up so fast. So mature at such a young age. You really are something else. When the crowd settled down, Genma announced the next match. Second match contestants come down. Shikamaru and Choji went down to the arena and looked at each other. Choji smiled warmly at his teammate. Come on, Shikamaru. Ganbat. Same to you, Choji. Second match is between Nara Shikamaru and Akamichi Choji. Hajime. Choji started off as he formed a seal and used a trademark family jutsu. Baika no Jutsu. Choji pulled his limbs and head in, letting out plumes of chakra as he announced the next part of the combo. Nikuden Sensha. Choji flew up into the air and began spinning. Shikamaru looked scared as Choji came rolling at him with his favorite mantra. Roll, 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 roll. Shikamaru leapt out of the way and into the trees nearby as Choji rolled past him, clearly enjoying himself. Shikamaru sighed. Mendokusei. Choji came straight back at the tree and Shikamaru dodged as Choji snapped the tree like a twig. Shikamaru saw his chance as he landed. Kajimane no Jutsu. Shikamaru's shadow stretched out and caught Choji, who stopped spinning. Shikamaru smirked. Knowing you, Choji, you wouldn't let me catch you like that unless you had a reason. Choji smirked as he returned to normal size. Choji had found that the Nara's Kajimane no Jutsu may stop your body's movements, but it did not stop you from channeling chakra. Choji was surrounded by a wave of chakra which concentrated around his arm as he announced his jutsu. Buban Baika no Jutsu Kondi. Shikamaru lost control of his Kajimane from the rather large aura of power coming off Choji while his right arm and hand grew to a disproportionate size, bringing the appendage around in a fast sweep of the area. Ude. Shikamaru jumped above the sweep and Choji returned his arm to normal while he started the next part, the combo. Hagi. Choji brought his right leg up and it grew in size as he brought it down on Shikamaru's prone airborne form. Shikamaru's eyes widened as he realized he was about to be flattened. Since he wasn't on the ground, Shikamaru couldn't use his clan jutsu, so he performed a kawarimi with a branch from the tree Choji had destroyed. The thick branch was shattered to splinters as Choji withdrew his leg. Choji jumped out of the way as he felt Shikamaru's shadow racing up behind him. Choji hopped and skipped with agility that belied his size as the shadow tendril chased after him. Choji noticed that Shikamaru wouldn't be able to extend his shadow much further, and after one last jump, the tendril stopped. Shikamaru sighed as he withdrew his shadow and put his hands together in his thinking pose. Choji used this time to pull out a scroll and procure a bag of chips, which he hurriedly ate to regain his chakra, and pulled out a special Akamichi food pill, increasing his chakra capacity temporarily. Shikamaru finished his thinking and gave Choji his shugi face. Choji smiled. Are we going to get serious now, Shikamaru? Yeah. Choji smiled as he prepared his new jutsu by releasing a massive wave of chakra that surrounded him in a blue shell and announced his jutsu. Cho Baika no Jutsu. Shikamaru's sweat dropped, as did the majority of the audience, as Choji grew absurdly huge and pulled out a scroll that was not one Naruto had given him, procuring a rather large wooden pole from it. Choji flipped the scroll back up and put it away before he proceeded to use the pole to slam it onto the ground when Shikamaru was. Shikamaru had not expected this and he hurried to amend his plans. Shikamaru continued dodging Choji's attacks before he had an idea. Shikamaru dodged the latest attack and jumped onto the pole before using chakra to make sure he stuck to it. Choji's eyes widened in surprise as he tried to shake Shikamaru off it, which he almost succeeded in doing as Shikamaru slapped a number of explosive notes to it and jumped clear as Choji brought the weapon around for a final swing. During this time, Choji was aware that Shikamaru had placed something on his ankles and looked down to see several explosive notes and stopped the pole above his head. Shikamaru chuckled. My clan jutsus are useless against you in this state. However, in exchange for size and power, you sacrifice a great deal of agility. While you brought it around for the final swing, it gave me several seconds to attach explosive notes to your ankles. You would have killed me and I would have killed you. Good match, Choji. Choji smiled as he returned to regular size and Shikamaru diffused the notes. Genma smiled. This match has ended in a tie. No one progressed to round 2 from this match. The group cheered and applauded the pair as they left the battlefield. Up in the stands, Kakashi turned to Kurenai. All your students are progressing rapidly. It's not surprising they made it this far. Kurenai nodded in acknowledgement as they exchanged a few more words before Genma announced the next match. Next match's contestants, get down here. Both Shino and Neji came down and faced off. Both of them calm, cool and collected. Shino with his hands in his pockets while Neji had his hands at his sides. This was one of the two fights the majority of people had come to see. Genma looked at each of them, seeing they were ready, he started the match. Third match is between Hyuga Neji and Aburame Shino. Hajime. Both of them remained still. Everyone in the crowd held their breath before Neji smirked. Naruto has a lot of confidence in your abilities, from what he has told me of you. I wish to see why. Shino didn't move a muscle as he spoke. Naruto also speaks quite highly of you. Neji smiled as he got into his Juken stance, but Shino did not get into any stance. Neji activated his Byakugan and charged Shino, leaving afterimages behind him. Shino raised hands to let his bugs free, but he could not do so in time as Neji struck his heart with his extended hand. Shino collapsed to the floor and burst into bugs, making Neji jump back. Neji saw Shino behind him sending a wave of bugs at him. Neji knew from his research that these bugs ate a person's chakra, so he decided to test the theory in the most extreme circumstances. He got down and released chakra from all his tenketsu, spinning like a top. Hakusho Kaden. The bugs collided with the spinning wall of chakra and consumed a small amount of it before they were shredded to pieces. Eventually, both parties stopped their assault defense to minimize their losses. Neji knew that these bugs lived on chakra, and with his Byakugan could see that the bugs were eating Shino's chakra as well, leaving him with minimal chakra to use for jutsus. Neji saw a weakness in the Aburame method. As long as the bugs could not feed on chakra, they would not listen to him. So, Neji prepared for his clan's ultimate jutsu. He got into a stance which the Hyugas in the audience recognized immediately. This is it. You are within range of my divination. Shino raised an eyebrow at this claim as Neji prepared for the jutsu. Jiyukenho. Hake Rokujiyuyansho. Neji charged in and dealt the first two strikes with blinding precision and speed. Hake. Nisho. Shino stumbled back as Neji danced acrobatically, delivering the next two. Yansho. Shino continued to stumble back as Neji pounded him with the next wave. Hasho. Jurokusho. Sanjunasho. Rokujuyansho. Neji pumped a lot of chakra into the combo and sent Shino flying back as he smirked. However, Neji was suddenly aware that his chakra was declining far more rapidly than it should. He looked at his hands and arms to see them covered in bugs. He also saw that from his legs came a trail of bugs that led to a small mound in the arena. Neji gasped. When did you? Shino got to his hands and knees, obviously in a lot of pain as he answered. Each time you sealed a tenketsu, I placed a large number of bugs onto your fingers. My clan not only have control over the bugs within us, but also bugs in the area that we have communicated with before. I came here for the past month almost every day to communicate and form a treaty with the nest of Kikai bugs living here. As long as they have some chakra to eat, whether it is my own or my opponent's, they will do as I ask them. Both of our clan techniques are ill-suited for each other. We both rely on chakra. Both of our clans concentrate on stopping the opponent's chakra flow. The best we could have hoped for was a tie, which is what happened. Neji fell to his knees as his chakra dropped to dangerously low levels. Shino continued panting as they both dropped to the ground, unconscious. Genma observed them before announcing the result. Neither opponent is able to fight. No one progresses from this round. Despite the result, the audience was content. Genma called the last contestants of the first round forward. Gaara used Suna Shushin to get to the arena while Rock Lee jumped over the railing. Rock Lee got into his Guken style while Gaara stood motionless. Genma started it off. Fourth and final match of round 1 between Rock Lee and Sabaku no Gaara. Hajime. Lee's eyes widened as he caught the cork of Gaara's gourd which Gaara had flung projected at him very discreetly. Please don't be too hasty. Lee crushed the cork and dropped it to the ground as he charged forward and launched into a taijutsu assault. Gaara's sand rose to protect him and Gaara never moved. After several more kicks and punches, Lee leapt into the air and launched several shuriken at Gaara, whose sand caught it and turned into a Suna Bunshin. The Suna Bunshin threw them back at Lee and Lee threw 2 more to cancel the attacks out. Lee ran in and tried several more attacks before he confirmed his suspicions. He would not be able to land a hit at this speed. Lee looked up into the crowd and saw Guy, who nodded. Lee smiled and jumped backwards before reaching into his orange leg warmers and pulled out weights. Naruto smiled. The looks on everyone's faces would be priceless. Lee held the weights up, displaying each weight had the kanji for guts on it. Yosh, I can move much easier now. Lee dropped the weights and the section of the arena around Lee was surrounded in a cloud of smoke as the weights hit the ground. Naruto saw everyone's expression and laughed. He only wished he had his camera here with him. Naruto stopped his laughter and mentally groaned when he heard Guy shout out to his student. Ike, Lee. OSSU. Lee charged at Gaara with blinding speed that shocked everyone. Lee punched at Gaara's Suna no Tate, breaking through it and disappearing, leaving a whistling noise in the air from the speed he was moving. He proceeded to smash the sand shield in places, leaving Gaara wide-eyed and looking frantically for Lee. Finally, Lee aimed a straight punch and smashed Gaara in the face, sending him sprawling. When he got back up, Guy could be heard with another one of his cheesy lines with matching genjutsu that even Kurenai couldn't make sense of, making everyone in the general vicinity rather afraid of the man. Seishoha. Bakuhatsuda. OSSU. Lee's eyes caught fire as he charged in again and proceeded to land several more hits on Gaara before Lee noticed that his attacks were having little effect, possibly because of the fact that Gaara had sand covering his face. Gaara's face twisted into a grin that can only be associated with serial killers and madmen. The sand replaced itself and Gaara looked at Lee. Come. Lee knew his only option left to get rid of that sand was to apply high damage from above the sand, so he undid the medical tape around his hands and prepared for his move. Prepare yourself. Lee charged in and created a ring of dirt around Gaara from running as fast as he was. Gaara was wary. Hurry up and come. As you wish. Lee broke out of the ring and gave Gaara a savage kick to the chin, but Gaara would not float. I'm not done yet. Lee pushed himself off the ground with his hands and proceeded to give Gaara a sickening combo of kicks that resounded throughout the stadium. The sand tried futilely to catch up to its master as Lee continued high into the sky. After the last one, Lee froze from the pain and shut his eyes before regaining his resolve, wrapping the bandage around Gaara, grabbing hold of him and began spinning until they were a blur. Take this, Omit Renge. The pair crashed into the ground, making it shatter under the impact, kicking up a huge cloud of dust and throwing rocks everywhere. Lee landed beside the crater, breathing heavily. That should have hurt. Lee noticed that part of Gaara's face crack and fall in, revealing nothing but an empty shell of sand. The whole body lost its color and disintegrated, much to everyone's chagrin. Nani. Lee turned around to see Gaara rise from the ground and smirk at him, laughing manically. Gaara formed a ram seal and smirked as the sand shot upwards before slamming into Lee, making him scream out in pain. Naruto knew that after opening the first gate like that, Lee was in no position to dodge from the pain it inflicted to his body. Naruto was forced to watch Gaara for the next 15 minutes toy with Lee before Lee looked up into the crowd and let a tear shed from his eye. Naruto could tell without looking that Guy was smiling at him. If this was any indication, this was bad. Very bad. Lee regained his speed, much to everyone's amazement. Lee stared at Gaara. Guy-sensei is smiling for me. That alone is enough to make me stronger. Far stronger. Naruto's eyes bulged. He was going to use his most powerful move. In what to others was extremely uncharacteristic, Naruto yelled out to Lee. Lee, don't you dare use that move. You'll die. Everyone stared at Naruto. Those close to him felt the waves of fear rolling off him and knew what he was saying was true. I'm sorry, Naruto-kun, but I have to. The condition to use it has been met. Lee focused himself and was surrounded by a column of chakra-infused wind. Gaara was unfazed. I don't know what you're doing, but this is the end for you. True. Either way, this move will decide everything. Gaara straightened and his hair began to rustle from the amount of wind Lee's chakra was displacing. Naruto-kun, I cannot be the only one who loses here. Guy-sensei, please acknowledge this. Now is the time. The rocks on the ground began lifting into the air and breaking as Lee concentrated further. Naruto saw that Lee's body was undergoing the transformation of the second gate, the energy gate. His body was turning red. Chakra began surging off Lee uncontrollably as he revealed himself in all his glory. Pupilless white eyes, hair standing on end and red skin. To abide by, and protect my way of the ninja. The third gate, the life gate. Kai. Lee began growling as his body was covered by a green aura and the chakra wind surrounded him turned blood red, while regular blue chakra surrounded him in a double helix shape. Lee squatted as he opened the next gate. Now, for the fourth gate. The wound gate. Kai. Lee was now screaming an unearthly scream as his body pulsed with power. He ducked and then charged at Gaara, ripping the ground up from under him as he kicked Gaara, and the stadium was covered in dust which cleared to reveal Gaara flying up into the air with Lee nowhere to be seen. Naruto focused chakra to his eyes to assist them in seeing Lee's movements, as a lot of chunins and junins in the audience were doing. The armor of sand again. Then how about this? Lee used a modified version of Shushin unique to him and Guy to reappear in front of Gaara and smashed him towards the ground, releasing a visible shockwave before using the Shushin to get behind Gaara and smashed him again up into the air again. This process repeated for well over 3 minutes until Lee got above him and prepared for the final attack. This is the end. Fifth gate, the forest gate. Kai. Lee was surrounded by a faint blue glow for a second before he charged at Gaara. Gaara tried to block, but Lee used the Shushin one more time to get under Gaara's guard and punch him in the stomach, sending him to the ground, but caught him from the bandages he had wrapped around his waist to pull him back up. Take this, Ura Renge. Lee slammed his right fist and foot into Gaara with all the strength he had left, watching him as he plummeted to earth, letting off cloud of dust and rock that again covered the stadium, and Naruto saw Lee roll out of the cloud and come to a complete stop. When the cloud of dust dissipated, everyone saw Gaara surrounded by a small shield of sand that had protected him just enough to save his life. He was breathing heavily as he raised his hand shakily at Lee and sent a wave of sand at him while Lee tried pitifully to get out of the way. He couldn't even get out of the way with his muscles ripped and the sand closed in on Lee when it exploded outwards. When it cleared, everyone saw Naruto there, glaring at Gaara. Gaara looked at him. Why did you save him? Because, unlike you, I know when to stop a fight. Lee's muscles have been completely ripped to pieces. He is incapable of defending himself and you try and kill him. To me, Lee is an important friend I am willing to die for. If that means killing you to ensure he'll live, so be it. Gaara stiffened as he clutched his head and moaned in pain. Naruto stared at Gaara as he shakily got up, the gourd reforming on his back. Gaara started walking off as Genma announced the winner. Shosha. Everyone gasped as Naruto turned around to see Lee standing, his knees shaking, standing in his Guken style. Naruto ran to Lee. Lee, Yamera, you've done enough. Naruto gasped as his eyes began water before he saw what had really happened. Lee, you're still trying even after you've lost consciousness. I don't believe it. Lee, you're stronger than I could ever be. Shosha. Gaara. Guy appeared on the field and hugged Lee gently as he laid him on the ground. Naruto saw the medics rushing onto the field as they began checking Lee. After about 30 seconds, they made their analysis. Guy-san, Lee's injuries are severe. It's amazing he's still alive. If Naruto-san had not stopped that attack, this boy would most likely be dead now. With these injuries, it will take several months to heal with all of our current specialists working on him. Guy nodded solemnly as they carted Lee off to the medical facilities of the stadium to stabilize him before moving him to the hospital to receive emergency treatment. Genma turned back to the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, as with all Chunin exam finals, we will now have a 1-hour recess between the rounds. Slowly, people started getting up and leaving the stands to go to the bathroom, buy food and drink and stretch their muscles. All talk was of Naruto and Lee. Naruto left to check up on Lee. When he got there, the medics saw him and one came over to him. Naruto-san, thank you for stepping in for Lee. If he had been hit with that sand, he would never have been able to be a shinobi again. Naruto nodded solemnly. Can I see him? The medic nodded and led Naruto into the room where Neji, Tenten and Guy were watching the medics working on Lee. They turned to Naruto. Guy began crying as he hugged Naruto, who stiffened. Naruto-kun, you are the epitome of youth. Thank you for saving Lee. Naruto nodded. No problem, Guy-sensei. Is there anything I can do for you to repay you for such a glorious display of youthfulness? Naruto could think of one thing and only one thing. How about letting go of me? It's kinda hard to breathe. Guy let go of Naruto and he gasped for air. Guy smiled at Naruto. My apologies, Naruto-kun. They chatted for a bit longer before Naruto decided to go see the others. 5 minutes later, in the shops of the stadium. All of the rookie genin and their Junin senseis except Sasuke had decided to get something to eat, settling for barbecue. They had taken their seat and were about to make their orders when Naruto walked in. Kiba called out to him. "Oi, Naruto, over here." All conversation in the store stopped as they turned to see Naruto walking over to the long table and took a seat next to Kurenai. "Hey guys." Ino looked at Naruto in awe. "Naruto, what was that last move in your match? I've never seen anything like it." Naruto smiled at her as he made his order and explained. "I knew that ninja frogs of a certain rank and above are able to produce oil, so I decided to use a Kaden Gukakyu no Jutsu in tandem with the oil to make a giant fireball and tried and knock Kiba and Akamaru out of their henge, but not damage them enough to seriously hurt them." Kiba laughed. "So you invented that on the spot?" Naruto shrugged. "Invented is probably not the right word. I think rediscovered is better. Considering all of the names I saw on the scroll of the frog contract, I'd be amazed if one of them hadn't done something similar before." Kiba smiled. "You're something else, Naruto. I'm not surprised I lost." "Don't put yourself down, Kiba. As I said, the fact that you forced me reveal 3 of the 5 jutsus I learnt during the last month says you're good. If I hadn't learnt those jutsus, I wouldn't be surprised if I had lost. When you used the Garoga, you seemed to be spinning faster than your regular Gatsuga. Is that why you marked me with Akamaru? Because you were spinning too fast to see?" Kiba's eyes widened. "Yeah, so, what did you think of it?" Naruto smiled. "To tell you the truth, I was scared witless when I saw you spinning at me. If you had hit me, no matter how good I was, I would have been dead. It must take a great deal of chakra to maintain that form and maintain the spin. As a last resort, I'd say it's like Lee's Urarenge. Uses up a massive amount of chakra and after it, you won't be able to fight. Use it wisely, Kiba." Kiba nodded at the breakdown of the jutsu and Naruto's advice, taking it to heart. At the mention of Lee, Shikamaru's eyes narrowed. "How is he?" Naruto turned serious. "The doctors say if I hadn't jumped down there, he'd be dead now. Lee's muscles have been completely torn to shreds and his bones have suffered minute fractures. With all of the nurses and doctors helping him, he should recover in about 3 or 4 months. That's why I didn't want him to use that jutsu. When Guy was teaching it to Lee and explained the effects, he offered to teach it to me, but I declined. I wouldn't be willing to go that far to defeat an enemy. After seeing how Gaara survived it, I'm glad I didn't. A player who obtains a Pyrrhic victory cannot move their piece forward. Lee unfortunately never realized that until now. Luckily, he'll get the chance to learn from that lesson." Shikamaru nodded. The meat for their orders arrived and was placed in front of them as they took several pieces of meat and placed them on the multiple cooking racks that covered a barbecue that was attached to the underside of the table. After their meat had cooked, they picked it up and ate it, placing more meat on the cooker as they continued chatting. After about 35 minutes, a message played over the loudspeaker. "The next round matches will begin in 10 minutes. Will all competitors please report back to the waiting box? Thank you." Naruto polished off the last piece of meat and sighed in contentment. Most of them were staring at the speed with which Naruto ate. He never even lowered his mask for long enough for them to see his face. He noticed them staring at him and smiled. "I learnt from the best. Nissan can polish off a large bowl of ramen in less than 3 seconds. Pieces of meat like this are no problem for me." Everyone's sweat dropped as Naruto smiled. "One day, I'll show you guys my face. Not yet though." They nodded as they paid for their own meals and left. Naruto separated from the rest of them and headed towards the members' entrance, his friends wishing him luck. Once he got there, he saw Gaara was already there. There was only one match left. Uzumaki Naruto vs Sabaku no Gaara. "Naruto, Gaara, you two are up." They both went down to the arena and stood facing each other. Finals. Uzumaki Naruto vs Sabaku no Gaara. Hajime. Genma jumped back as Naruto glared at Gaara. "That was a cowardly thing you did before. Didn't you feel any remorse whatsoever?" "No, the reason for my existence is to kill everyone in the world besides me. While there are people in the world to let me feel that the world is wonderful." Naruto sighed. This guy was one nutcase. That love symbol on your forehead is rather ironic, isn't? What exactly do you love, apart from killing people? I love only myself and fight only for myself. That is what makes me so powerful. That kind of loneliness is what makes you strong. Naruto smiled lazily at him. You're not the type of guy to see the truth unless I beat it into you. Try me, Uzumaki Naruto. With pleasure. Naruto used his modified version of Shushin to slug Gaara in the face, sending him flying into the wall of the stadium. Gaara, I know that I will have to show you jutsus that I have never shown people before. You are indeed strong, but not because of loneliness. You are strong because of what you are. Gaara's eyes widened. Naruto was going to call him a monster. You are strong because you are the container for a greater demon. It took a while to figure out that that demonic chakra was, and I finally identified it if your fight against Lee. You're the container for the Ikibi no Shukaku. It's a sad fate, one that the containers get no say in. However, if you truly want to become strong, use the demon's destructive powers to defend your friends. That way, it shows you have more willpower than the demon you contain instead of murdering everyone left, right and center. Shut up. Gaara was clutching his head and screaming in agony as the Suna no Yoroi started cracking, and Gaara shook his head from side to side until his gourd started cracking and formed some sort of veiny appendage that grew over his right hand and right side of his face. You are my prey. Gaara extended his modified hand and tried to crush Naruto, who jumped out of the way. Gaara proceeded to wreak havoc as he laughed manically. Are you scared of me, Uzumaki Naruto? Do you fear my existence? Show me this true power you speak of. Confirm it. Confirm your existence. Attack me. As you wish. Naruto held out his right hand and the chakra condensed into it, forming a sphere that looked like a miniature typhoon. There was a collective murmur in the crowd as Naruto announced the name of the jutsu. Rasengan. Naruto charged at Gaara and Gaara charged at him. Naruto aimed the Rasengan at Gaara's chest as it impacted, and Naruto let the Rasengan grow in size by releasing a little bit of control over its form. Gaara screamed in agony as the Rasengan surrounded him in a sphere of wild light that took him to the far wall, ripping up the ground in its path before it exploded against the wall. This Gaara is the kind of power that will make you strong. The kind of power that you use to protect your friends. Gaara started laughing as he got up, the severely damaged area of his stomach regenerating so fast it was visible. I see. This is the kind of pain that makes me feel alive. You are truly interesting, Uzumaki Naruto. By killing you, I can get an even stronger sensation of life. Naruto narrowed his eyes as Gaara completed the transformation and glared at Naruto. Naruto bit his thumb and formed the seals as he concentrated on which animal he wanted to bring out. Kuchio's number jutsu. A cloud of smoke about twice the size of a human appeared, and from it was something that looked to be half dog, half wolf. The canine looked up at him. So, you're that new kid. What do you want? Naruto pointed to Gaara and the canine's eyes narrowed. As that, Shukaku. His container. I see. Well, let's move, pup. The canine charged at Gaara, who extended his hand far too fast for either of them to see as Naruto was knocked off his summon and the summon was slammed up against the wall while Gaara separated his hand from his arm, regrowing it. Show me, Uzumaki Naruto. Show me you are willing to die for your friends. If you don't defeat me, the sand holding that canine will slowly crush him to death. Are you fearless enough to save him? Naruto disappeared and reappeared next to the canine before forming a single hand seal, muttering, Kai, while Gaara charged at him. You don't have time for that. Naruto roared as he punched the hand of sand, sending the sand everywhere. When the smoke cleared, Naruto had freed the canine and the last of the sand on the wall was dropping to the ground. Are you all right? Yeah, fine. Naruto looked up to see Gaara going for the canine again as Naruto shoved it out of the way and took the hit himself, flying back and creating a crater in the arena wall. Naruto slowly got up while the canine came over to him. You should be worrying about yourself, pup. Guess so. Thanks for your help. The canine nodded as Gaara charged him. Good luck. The canine poofed and Naruto jumped out of the way to avoid being nailed. I've got to think of something. Naruto had one last option as he pulled out two scrolls while dodging another of Gaara's swipes. Gaara recognized it immediately, as did the other people who had been present in the prelims. However, they did not know it was a modified version. Naruto landed and formed three hand seals before announcing his jutsu. Ninpu Kuchios. Fubiki no Kanai. Everyone's eyes widened at the name and the arena exploded into smoke. Two pillars of smoke rose. They were not green and black like last time, this time they were red and blue. Naruto jumped up into the middle of the double helix of the scrolls and began palming the scrolls and hurling kunai at Gaara, who smiled and blocked them with his sand arms. After Naruto had finished, Gaara laughed. "Did you really hope an attack like that would work?" Naruto smiled. "Yup, now for the last part of it. Debakua." Everyone's eyes widened as the entire arena flashed before letting off an almighty explosion that the whole of Konoha felt. Once it settled, they saw that Gaara was on the ground, panting. He was completely soaked in blood and he had lost his sand body. Gaara tried to get up but couldn't as he was aware of Naruto walking over to him. Gaara's eyes widened in fear. "Don't come close to me. The pain of being alone is completely out of this world, isn't it?" Naruto collapsed to his knees in front of Gaara and began panting. Gaara's eyes widened. "That pain of being unwanted, of being despised, I've felt it too. However, people saved me from that cold hell and accepted me. If you dare harm them, I will kill you. I fight for those I love and cherish, not for myself. That's what makes one strong, Gaara. Fighting for those important to you. A ninja's true power isn't brought out until the lives of those that mean the most to them are put in jeopardy. That is when the true power of a ninja will take form. Remember that." Gaara got a blank look on his face that people who were lost deep in memory and thought war. Genma checked Gaara and smiled. Gaara is unable to continue, making Uzumaki Naruto the winner of the Chunin selection exams. The crowd erupted into thunderous applause and cheering as Naruto dropped face down on the ground. Naruto whispered to himself. "Kurenai-chan, I did it." Naruto fell unconscious as the medics came out and took both Naruto and Gaara away for medical treatment. 2 days after the finals, Naruto groggily returned to consciousness and knew from the heavy scent of disinfectant that he was in the hospital. He cracked open his eyes to see 4 people sitting around his bed. At the movement, they looked at him. Naruto's vision was still blurry, but he could make out the shapes of his teammates and 2 of his favorite people, Kurenai and Kakashi. "Good to see you're awake, Naruto. Can you move yet?" Naruto nodded as he slowly got up into a sitting position and rubbed his eyes. When he looked at them with his cleared vision, they all had looks of relief. "So, how long have I been out?" "Just over 2 days. Soka." The door opened and a nurse came in and smiled at him. "Whoa, take 2, did she just smile at me?" "Good to see you're awake, Naruto-san. Most people after an expenditure of chakra like that would have been out for about a week. How are you feeling?" Naruto smiled lazily. "Not bad, still a bit groggy from waking up after 2 days of sleep." The nurse smirked good-naturedly. "Not surprising. Apart from that, everything else seems to be fine. No problems." The nurse nodded and performed a few checkups before she wrote some things on the clipboard at the end of his bed. "Well, I see no reason to hold you here. You're free to go when you want, just remember to sign out at the reception." "Sure thing." The nurse smiled and left the room, closing the door behind her. Naruto looked at his visitors and got serious. "Mind explaining?" Kakashi smiled. "After your carefully chosen speech at the exam when you faced Gaara, not faltering even when he transformed and trapped the canine, most people saw that you were not Kyuubi, but in fact its jailer. They realized if you were Kyuubi, you would not have said or done those things. Kyuubi did not save lives with its power, it took them and enjoyed it. Both your matches proved that you would not take a person's life unless you were forced to, even if they were an enemy. Having Gaara act as he did only helped prove your point. Quite a number of people have done a 180 and have come to respect you. Some still have very slight reservations, and only the ones who are clinically insane or leaning towards it still hate you. You really have your way with words, don't you, Ototo?" Naruto smiled at Kakashi, who returned the smile. Kakashi got up from his position of leaning against the wall. Well, when you're ready, the Hokage has asked to see you, Shikamaru and Choji. Naruto nodded and got out of bed to find that he still had his undershirt and boxers on with a hospital gown over it. After his team left the room, he got changed into the clean clothes that were neatly piled up on the bench and walked out of the room. Kakashi had been right. A lot of the nurses and doctors were smiling at him. Others gave him a simple nod while one or two still gave him hateful looks. He walked to the front desk and signed out, catching up with his friends as they proceeded to the Hokage's tower, where they were let in to see the old man. Once in there, the Hokage smiled at them. All of you represented us well. Our intake of mission requests has dramatically increased, and every single judge agreed with my thoughts of your matches. They were most pleased to see Konoha has such intelligent, powerful aspiring youngsters in its ranks. They recommended that the three of you be promoted to Chunin, and I agree with their judgment. All three of them smiled, as did both Kakashi and Kurenai. The Hokage gave a short speech as to what was expected of a Chunin and their duties before he gave them their Chunin flak vests. He dismissed them and they left the office. The five of them walked down the street towards a barbecue restaurant that they went to frequently to celebrate when they heard a group of people approaching. They turned to see the majority of the rookie genin with their senseis as well as the entire team guy, with Lee on a crutch. The only one missing was Sasuke. Naruto frowned mentally. He hadn't seen a lot of the brooding Uchiha lately. He let the thought go as Kiba smiled at them. So the three of you were promoted. Congratulations, you deserve it. The two groups joined up and followed them to the BBQ restaurant. Kakashi's sweat dropped and laughed nervously. I don't think I can pay for all of you. They all smiled at Kakashi's antics. Don't worry, we'll pay for ourselves. Kakashi smiled as they entered the restaurant. Irashe. They took the long bench that was reserved for large groups and their orders were taken as they turned on the grillers in the table. They chatted about anything and everything, taking their plates of uncooked meat and began grilling them. They saw that Naruto had been right when he said he had learnt from the best. Kakashi never seemed to move, yet the meat was indeed disappearing and his chopsticks had traces of cooked meat on them. Naruto looked at Lee after finishing another bite. Lee, did you see why I didn't want you to use Urarenge? Lee nodded slowly. Lee, being an excellent ninja does not mean throwing your life away. Sometimes, it takes more guts to know when to retreat than it does to keep fighting. There is a saying in Shugi you should listen to. A player who obtains a Pyrrhic victory cannot move their piece forward. Lee, you're more important to me alive than dead. After all, I can't spar with you if you're in this shape, can I? Lee nodded, brightening up. You are indeed a genius, Naruto-kun. However, unlike most geniuses, you do not take things for granted. You are truly amazing, Naruto-kun. Naruto smiled. Despite what others say, Lee, you're a genius in your own way. No amount of hard work will let someone open as many gates as you can at your age. Everyone has one area that they specialize in, whether it be obvious or not. Get better soon, okay? Lee nodded and Guy went into one of his speeches. Yash, Naruto-kun's youthfulness is an example to us all. Guy didn't get to finish his sentence as Ino and Tenten gave him a punch to the head, causing two large bumps to appear. Naruto and Kakashi smiled lazily at them and everyone got a sense of grim satisfaction that Guy had been stopped from one of his rampages spoiling the meal, except Lee, who was mortified. The friendly chat kept up through the meal as they discussed topics of many natures. Even Lee seemed to forget his current predicament and joined in the conversation as he ate. They enjoyed the meal and paid the bill with a generous tip before walking out. They decided to split up to do their own things, leaving Naruto to his own devices. Early 2 mornings later, Naruto was awoken by a slight tapping noise that repeated itself rhythmically. Tap tap tap. Naruto looked to his bedroom window to see a messenger pigeon tapping on his window as he opened it and took the message from the canester on its leg. Its job done, the pigeon took flight and headed back to its home. Naruto unrolled the message and read it. Please report to the Hokage Tower ASAP. Naruto destroyed the note and got dressed hurriedly before he grabbed his ninja pouch and rushed out the door. Hokage Tower. When he got there, Naruto met something he never thought he would. When the Anbu guard admitted him in, he saw that the old man was not there. However, the council members, which were the old man's two former teammates, as well as Jiraiya and the heads of the major clans were all present. When the door opened, the conversation in the room stopped and everyone turned to him. Naruto noticed the looks. There was anger, fear and other emotions, however, they were not directed at him. Naruto closed the door and stepped up. I can tell by the looks on your faces and the fact that all the major people of the village are here that something big happened. Jiraiya nodded. Not one, but two major things. It seems that Sarutobi-sensei was making his regular weekly check-up on the traitor Kabuto when the Anbu that were supposed to be guarding him attacked. They were standing directly behind him and gave no prior indication of their intentions before the strike. Sarutobi was grievously wounded and the Anbu took Kabuto and escaped. He's unable to continue work as the Hokage, so we essentially have lost our leader. Naruto nodded slowly. For even Anbu to mask their intentions that well from a cage showed a great deal of skill. So I guess that explains why everyone is here, to sort out who'll be the Godime. The female village elder, Kaharu nodded. We initially asked Jiraiya to be the new Hokage, however he has declined. Naruto nodded. He could tell that he played some role in this, however, what that role was, he had no clue of. So, if Jiraiya-sensei declined, why was I brought here? The other council member, Homura, spoke. Naruto, Jiraiya may have declined, but he has suggested that we instate another of the Sannin as the Godime. Orochimaru was not even considerable, so that left one person. Tsunade. Jiraiya nodded. Yeah, Tsunade. However, she will be hard to trace. The only clue we will have is the trail of debt she leaves behind. Naruto's sweat dropped, so the name, Legendary Sucker, wasn't just for show. That still left one question. So, why was I brought here? Jiraiya smiled and put a hand on Naruto's head. You're coming with me to get her. After your speech at the main matches, we're going to need you. Naruto raised an eyebrow. She's not going to come back willingly, then. Jiraiya shook his head. If anything, she'll resist. Her experience with the word, Hokage, isn't pleasant, to say the least. Naruto nodded. Jiraiya turned back to the others. It may take a month or two to find her. Can you handle things until we get back? Kaharu nodded. We have set up an emergency extended council that consists of the clan heads until you return. Please do not fail, as this is only temporary. Jiraiya nodded. Sure thing. Naruto, get your stuff and meet me at the West Gate in 30 minutes. On it. Naruto puffed out of existence and arrived moments later at his apartment. He gathered his things and left a note for Kakashi before making himself a quick bowl of instant ramen. He gobbled it down and ran to the West Gate. Jiraiya was there waiting for him, and once he arrived they set off to find Tsunade. At a lodging town not far away. Jiraiya led Naruto to a small lodging town, claiming he was going to start searching here. Jiraiya led Naruto to an inn and picked up the keys before he turned around to see a rather stunning black-haired woman in a rather skimpy violet dress. Naruto smiled at her while Jiraiya went mad. She's beautiful, sure, but she's nothing compared to her. Jiraiya slammed the keys into Naruto's hand before Naruto sensed something unusual about her. Jiraiya. Take the keys and go practice in our room. Listen. Jiraiya stopped and looked at Naruto, who narrowed his eyes. Something's not right. My genjutsu sense is on the verge of being set off when I look at her. Be careful. Jiraiya nodded but disregarded the warning as he ran off to do what he did best. Naruto sighed. Kuso Ero Senin. Be careful. Naruto took the keys up to his room and let himself in and began theorizing about a new jutsu when he heard a knock at the door. He sensed no chakra, so he took the key and went to open it. When he did he stared. Black cloaks with swirling red clouds. Akatsuki. Naruto noticed the Sharingan in the smaller of the pair. There was only one person who could have those eyes with 3 commas in both of them. Uchiha, Itachi. A second figure stepped out from behind him. A figure that reminded Naruto of a very familiar-looking shark. Hosagake, Kisame. There was only one word that could describe his situation. Screwed. Totally, fatally, utterly screwed. Oh, seems he knows us, Itachi-san. Naruto-kun, step outside please. What could he do? If he tried to run, he'd be caught and seriously wounded. If he tried to fight, it'd be over before he could do anything. So he did the only thing he could. He stepped outside. Itachi made way for him. Kisame smiled fairly at him. Itachi-san, it'd be troublesome if he moved around. Shall I cut of a leg? Naruto's sweat dropped. I know when I'm outmatched. No point in cutting of a leg. If I run, you'll catch me. If I fight, you'll beat me. I lost this the second you knocked on the door. Kisame smiled. Seems he's not entirely stupid. Well brat, let's get going. Kisame stopped as Naruto felt a rather weak amount of killer intent come from the opposite end of the hallway. Naruto looked and groaned mentally. It was Sasuke. It's been a while, Sasuke. Itachi showed no emotion. His voice was deadpan, his face made no movement save his mouth to form the words. Kisame looked over his shoulder at their newest guest. Oh, it's the Sharingan, and he looks very similar to you, Itachi-san. I heard you killed the entire clan. Naruto felt a spike in Sasuke's chakra at the last sentence. Sasuke got the look of a madman. Uchiha Itachi, like you've said, I've hated you and detested you, and I've survived. Sasuke charged Itachi, who looked bored for a second before regaining the emotionless mask. Itachi grabbed Sasuke's fist and held it. I'm not interested in you at the moment, Sasuke. Naruto saw his chance and used Shushin to get to where he felt Jiraiya's chakra source in the distance. Right now, Naruto knew that Sasuke was unreachable with words, so he had no choice but to leave him to the mercy of his brother and Kisame. When Naruto appeared next to Jiraiya, the man saw Naruto's fearful look. Akatsuki are here. Jiraiya understood the danger immediately and took his bag from Naruto. Let's go. Jiraiya and Naruto both summoned an animal. Jiraiya a frog and Naruto a wolf. If they went on foot, the Akatsuki would catch them easily, however, on mounts, they stood a fighting chance. Both of them tore through the town and got out, not looking back over their shoulders. The wolf's sense of smell was enough to tell them that they were being pursued. They increased their speed as they tore through the trees when they felt several chakra sources flare, all of them very familiar. One of which made Naruto's heart stop. Kurenai-chan. Naruto turned the wolf around and charged back, not even hearing Jiraiya's warning to stop. When Naruto got close enough to see, he saw something that made him seethe. Itachi was about to stab Kurenai with a rather long kunai. Naruto took his chances and used Shushin to flash over to Itachi to try and draw attention away from Kurenai. Itachi put a hand up and grabbed Naruto's extended foot and threw him through several trees before his momentum was lessened enough for the fourth tree to absorb his impact. He got up, and rushed back to see Itachi holding Kurenai around the throat with one arm and the elongated kunai at her jugular vein. Itachi was looking directly at Naruto. Naruto-kun, you will come with us, or we will kill this woman. Naruto's eyes widened. Knowing how Itachi had murdered over 300 people when he was 13 in under 24 hours, Naruto didn't doubt he wouldn't back up his threat if need be. Naruto saw the look in Kurenai's eyes. One that screamed, "Don't you dare." The kunai moved closer and touched the skin, drawing a trickle of blood. Naruto let his emotions get the better of him as he released a huge spike of killer intent which made Kisame smiled. Seems you struck a nerve, Itachi-san. Wonder if she's his this. Kisame held up his little finger to indicate that he was implying she was his girlfriend. Naruto turned a deep shade of crimson, and when Kurenai saw this reaction Naruto made to whatever Kisame was doing behind her and let a slight flush tint her cheeks. Kisame grinned. Seems I was right. Naruto looked at them, a look of calculation in his eyes. He had one shot at this. One and only one. If he stuffed it up, that was it. If he succeeded, he may just be able to get Kurenai away from Itachi's grasp. Naruto sighed and lowered his head, mentally muttering the word, Kai. No one noticed what had happened, and thought he was considering his options. Naruto just vanished and reappeared less than half a second later with his foot connecting with Itachi's stomach. He only realized his mistake when he kicked it. His eyes widened at the surge of chakra from Itachi as he grabbed Kurenai and tried to make it as far away as he could before the cage bunchen exploded. He could not escape the entire blast radius, but enough to make sure he would live. He shielded Kurenai with his body and took the blast full in the back, turning over to take the fall as well, much to Kurenai's dismay. By this stage, Jiraiya had made it to the clearing. Kisame growled and backed up against his raven-haired companion. "This is getting out of hand, Itachi-san. Kisame, we're leaving." Both of them disappeared and all attention turned to Naruto, who was on the ground panting. Jiraiya checked him and confirmed that his tenant was doing its job by healing his burns and cuts. Naruto looked up at Kurenai, who was also checking him. "Kurenai-chan, Daijobu." Kurenai smiled at him. "I'm fine. Soka." "Naruto, let me see your face." Naruto pulled down his mask and froze as Kurenai leaned in and gave him a kiss on the lips, much to the shock of those present. After getting over the initial shock, he began trembling and blushing furiously. Jiraiya, not missing a beat, pulled out his research notebook and a pen and began scribbling furiously as he let out restrained perverted giggles until he found his notebook shredded into pieces in his hands, seeing Asuma holding his trench knives with the blade extended by chakra and Kakashi twirling a kunai by the ring on the pommel. Naruto, on the other hand, couldn't give a damn about anyone else but himself and the fact that the woman of his dreams was kissing him. Her lips tasted oddly of strawberries. After what felt like an eternity, Kurenai pulled back, her lips tugging slightly at his as they separated. Asuma smirked at the situation. And so the Ice Queen of Konoha melts at the hands of a 12-year-old. Kakashi, Asuma and Jiraiya knew this was going to be ammo for quite some time to come. Kurenai smiled at Naruto's expression that showed he was completely out of it. She spoke to the others just as much as to Naruto. "Naruto, you're more of a man than any of these three could be." The three in question had their ammo ripped away from them and a huge ego bruise to boot with the claim, and their faces turned from calculated grins to looks of defeat, the exact same thought going through all three of their heads. "Ouch, Naruto's more of a man than me. That's harsh." Guy smiled as he pumped his fist. "Yosh, Naruto-kun's flames of youth burn more brightly than ever before. When I get back to Konoha, Lee and I will do 50 laps around Konoha on our hands." Naruto could have sworn he heard an "Asu" floating on the wind, but he was too out of it to really care. Naruto shook his head slowly and raised himself to a semi-seated position. Naruto shook his head to try and gain some semblance of regular thinking patterns back, but only partially succeeded. Naruto looked up at Kurenai and blushed heavily when she saw her smiling at him. Gathering his thoughts, he pulled his mask back up and stood up. Naruto looked serious. "What happened to Sasuke?" The other Junins' faces went blank before Kakashi answered for them. "It seems Itachi broke several ribs, his wrist, and unleashed a huge amount of psychological torture on him. At the moment, he's a vegetable. We really need you to get Tsunade back. Konoha's current capabilities to heal injuries cannot heal that extent of damage." Naruto nodded. "We'll get her." Jiraiya was still graving over the loss of his precious research material when Naruto walked up to him and smiled, tilting his head to the side. "Come on, sensei. We have a job to do." Sure." Naruto turned back to Kurenai and smiled before raising a hand and disappearing, leaving the three Junin to get Uchiha Sasuke and return to Konoha. About a week later, Naruto had followed Jiraiya through several towns, searching bars and gambling dens for any hint. When they did get one, they followed the advice and eventually, they ended up in a city that didn't surprise them whatsoever. Tanzaku City, known as the Fire Country's biggest gambling den. Not surprising she's here. Naruto's sweat dropped. He followed Jiraiya up the winding stone stairs that led up to the front of the city. Being a castle city, when they built it they had chosen a raised plateau that would tire the attackers before they could even launch an assault on the castle's outer walls. Now, since the days of feudal lords attacking one another with their private army of samurai were long gone, the town located inside the castle walls had extended to the limits of the raised plateau and the outer walls had been pulled down to give a more inviting feeling to the city. Once they got up there, They immediately began searching for the whereabouts of Tsunade by asking people if they had seen her when presented with a photo. By nightfall, not a single person they had questioned had seen her, so they decided to stop by a bar for a drink and nibblies before turning in for the night. However, luck decided to smile on them as they entered, and both Naruto and Jiraiya saw two women sitting at a booth near the back of the bar. One was a brunette that held a pig, while the other one was most definitely Tsunade. Jiraiya. Naruto smiled and followed as Jiraiya walked over to them. I finally found you, boy, am I beat. Jiraiya sat opposite Tsunade, whose cheeks were flushed pink from her drunken state, while Naruto sat opposite her aide. Naruto's genjutsu sense went off when he looked at Tsunade, who noticed the stare. What are you looking at, Gaki? Naruto smiled lazily. The genjutsu you're using. I've never seen anything like it. Both Tsunade's and her aide's eyes widened at this claim before they recovered. Tsunade pulled a stack of cards from her shirt and put them on the table. What do you want from me, Jiraiya? Jiraiya split the deck in half and shuffled them, keeping his face straight as he put the deck back on the table. I'll get straight to the point. The village elders have requested that you become the Godime Hokage. Tsunade's hand flinched as she was about to pick up the deck and hand the cards out. She recovered and began handing the cards out between both herself and Jiraiya, keeping her face neutral. After a while, she gave her response. Impossible. I refuse. Naruto smiled, expecting an answer of this nature, which did not go unnoticed. What's with the stupid smile? It reminds me of that pervert, Kakashi. Jiraiya smirked. Not surprising, since he was the one who adopted him at the age of 4. Tsunade's brain might be suffering from the effects of alcohol, but she could put 2 and 2 together. Blonde hair, blue eyes, and being adopted at the age of 4. This was Arashi's only son, Naruto. Most calm only referred to as the Kyuubi brat. Did they send him here to send me on a guilt trip and force me to come back to the village? Naruto's sweat dropped before scratching the back of his head nervously. Jiraiya covered for him. No, I took him with me to train him. Tsunade smirked as she picked up her hand. An ace of hearts. At least this one has some manners, unlike the last one of yours. Naruto smiled, but inside, he was rather annoyed. Please do not talk about my father like that. Shizune gasped at Naruto. Tsunade looked at her next card. A Jack of Hearts. But even the 4th died young. He threw his life away for his village. Naruto's eyebrow twitched. He was not going to snap. He hoped. Life isn't like money. Only an idiot bets his life so easily. Naruto snapped the chopsticks in his hand. This woman had no clue what she was talking about. My grandfather and the Nadaime wished to end the war, but they wasted their lives before they could accomplish that. Tsunade flicked the next card into view. A Queen of Hearts. You've changed, Tsunade. I'm in my 50s, even if I look like this. Time changes people, Jiraiya. Tsunade flicked the next card into view. A 10 of Hearts. She concentrated on her hand. Sarutobi-sensei is the same. If an old man is too relaxed in such a situation, of course he'll be hurt. Tsunade flicked the last card into view. A 4 of Spades. She sighed as she threw her hand on the table. Being a Hokage is a piece of crap. Only an idiot becomes one. That did it. Naruto snapped as he gathered chakra to his hand and slammed it into the table, shattering it. When he looked up, his eyes were no longer blue. They were blood red. The only one who's an idiot is you old hag. You call the first 3 Hokages idiots, and then you dare insult my father who saved the life of every single human on this planet in exchange for his life. It's bad enough the majority of the bastards don't care, but to have someone insult him because of it is unacceptable. Step outside, now. Tsunade smirked as she stepped outside, and stared at the brat at the other end of the street. Tsunade noticed that Naruto's feature had returned to normal, however, the hate was still there as she spoke to him in a clearly bored voice. Back your claim up, Gaki. Show me what. Tsunade didn't get to finish the sentence as she found herself flying back into a building, creating a large crater in the wall. Tsunade got up just in time to see Naruto finish the job with the wall as she dodged to the side, grabbing his arm and hurled him through 3 buildings. Naruto got to sitting position, coughing and looked at Tsunade in hatred. Let me ask you one thing before you pass out, Gaki. Why do you care so much for the Hokages? Naruto stared at her. Unlike you, becoming the Hokage is my dream. Tsunade's eyes widened as she lowered her head. Naruto smiled internally. He pulled out one of the Hiraishin kunais and hurled it at her feet and concentrated his chakra to try and pull it off. The only problem was that he still could not do it, and ended up using a regular Yondaime Shushin to get there. Tsunade aimed a kick for where she felt Naruto was going to land and hit him right in the gut, sending him sprawling back from the power of the kick. Tsunade looked at Jiraiya. Oi, Jiraiya, what do you think you're doing teaching him something he has no hope of learning? Naruto smirked. This is where he would force her to come back, indirectly. Want to make a bet that I can't? I'll master the move by the end of the week. Tsunade looked at him. What are the conditions? Hook, line and sinker. If I win, you have to come back with us. Tsunade smiled. If you lose, you have to give up your dream of becoming Hokage. However, if you win, I will also give you this. She pointed to the necklace she was wearing. Naruto's eyes narrowed while the others widened. Tsunade-sama, that's Shoidaim's necklace. For her to bet something like that meant something was up. The fact she hadn't lost in a bet yet meant she would likely never bet it. Naruto smiled. Stakes are high, considering you're betting that. Naruto's tone of voice used for the last word implied he had some idea as to what that necklace meant to her. He smiled lazily. All right, you're on. 1 week ending Monday. Tsunade turned on her heels. Meet here same time next week. Shizune, we're leaving. Tsunade-sama. Shizune ran after her, leaving Naruto to get up and follow Jiraiya to an inn. Later that evening, Naruto twirled the kunai used for Hiraishin around his finger absently as he thought about what he could possibly be doing wrong when there was a knock at the door. Naruto put the kunai away and unlocked the door to find Shizune. Shizune-san. Naruto-kun, I need to talk to you. Naruto opened the door and let her in, closing it behind him. So, what's up? Naruto-kun, please do not get the wrong idea. Stop. Shizune stopped at the hand Naruto had raised. Do you know what kind of an idea I have about Tsunade? Admittedly, she didn't. Let me explain then. I think her actions are understandable. Jiraiya told me a little bit about both of them and what they meant to her. Studying with Konoha's best in human psychologist gives me a fair idea as to what she is going through, as well as from my own personal experience. The fact that she's betting the necklace means she hasn't lost all of her hope yet. Shizune-san, I'm not just doing this for myself, or for the village. I'm doing this so she can heal a very close friend of mine. My friend opened 5 celestial gates in the Chunin exams not too long ago to try and beat a Jinchuriki. Naruto noticed Shizune's shocked expression and knew she understood the implications of what he was saying. Also, while coming here, another genin foolishly tried to attack his older brother and his companion. Who were they? Uchiha Itachi and Hoshigate Kisame. Shizune's eyes practically popped out of her head. Needless to say, despite the fact he was beaten to within an inch of death physically, he also suffered extreme psychological trauma. Tsunade is the only one who can heal him from his condition as a vegetable. Shizune nodded slowly. Her conceptions of Naruto had been completely wrong. Naruto looked at Shizune. Shizune, I'm not completely sure, but I sense a dormant evil radiating from that necklace. If I didn't know any better, I'd say it's some form of suppressed demonic chakra. Shizune's eyes widened even further. This boy was something else. Shizune, were the two she gave it to Jinchurikis? Shizune shook her head. No. I'm not certain, but I think that necklace will only accept Jinchurikis. I'd have to see it if a normal person wore it, but I have a feeling that necklace will indirectly kill any non-Jinchurikis that wear it. Shizune shook her head in disbelief. The amount of knowledge this boy had was incredible for someone his age. Naruto smiled at her. Don't let this smile fool you. I'm anything but lazy or stupid. It helps make enemies underestimate me. Shizune nodded and got up from her position on the edge of the bed. I'm sorry about that, Naruto-kun. Naruto shook it off with a dismissive wave of his hand. I'm used to it. Don't worry. Sleep well, Shizune-san. Shizune bowed and left the room, leaving Naruto to think. 3 days later. It was nightfall on the third evening of the allotted week. Naruto was training in a small field next to a waterfall. He panted as he tried to analyze what exactly he was doing wrong. He just didn't understand it. Sure, the idea was to get to the kunai using a method of transportation akin to the way summoned animals get to the real world, but how did he do that? He sat down and pulled out his supply scroll and summoned a bag of chips, tearing it open and digging in. That's when it hit him. He ate the chip and bit his thumb, forming the seals. Kuchio's no jutsu. Beside him, a small orange frog with a navy blue GI appeared. When the frog saw Naruto, he raised a webbed hand. Hey there, Naruto, what's up? Naruto lowered the chips to let Gamekichi grab some. I made a bet with one of Jiraiya's old teammates. I have to master the Hiraishin in the next 4 days. Gamekichi pulled out another chip and ate it. Sounds hard. Isn't that the Yondaime's jutsu? Naruto nodded. Yeah, the thing I don't get though is that I was told that to use it, you have to move like an animal does when it's summoned to the real world. Gamekichi pulled out another chip as did Naruto. So you summoned me to ask how we move, Naruto nodded. Yeah, any pointers? Gamekichi thought for a moment. It's kinda hard to explain. We just do it automatically. Show me how you do it and I'll see what I can tell you. Naruto nodded and got up and pulled the kunai out. He hurled it at a tree and felt the familiar tug on his mind and he tried to get there as fast as possible, ending up just using the regular shushin. Naruto walked back to Gamekichi. Well, did you feel a call or something that drew you to the kunai? Naruto nodded. Well, that's good. It means you can master it. When a human summons us from home, we get that tug at the back of our minds. As for how to answer it, I'm not sure. Naruto facefaulted. Gamekichi smiled as he pulled the chip packet to him. Try summoning one of the bigger talking frogs. They might know. Yeah. Gamekichi poofed out of existence. That's when Naruto realized something else. Every time he summoned something, whether it be an animal or something from a scroll, they always appeared and disappeared using a cloud of smoke. That had to have something to do with it. Sighing, he took out a soldier pill and popped it in at his mouth, ignoring the bitter tastes as he swallowed it and felt power returning to him. He bit his thumb again and poured more chakra into his summon as he formed the seals. He might as well go straight to the top. He slammed his fist onto the ground. Kuchio's no jutsu. When the smoke cleared, there was Fenrir. For some reason, he thought that summoning Gamabunta wouldn't get him the answers he wanted, so he decided to summon his canine counterpart. Fenrir looked up at Naruto questioningly. What do you want, Naruto? There are no amemis here, unless you mean that female of your species hiding behind the rock. Naruto had known Shizune was there for quite some time, but he had ignored her in favor of focusing on the task at hand. No, not Shizune-san. I actually needed to ask you something. Then speak, boy. I needed some advice on how you appear in the real world when you're summoned. Fenrir's eyes narrowed. Why do you need to know? Naruto gave a brief explanation behind Hiraishin, the bet in his session with Gamekichi. Fenrir nodded in agreement with Naruto's decision to summon him instead of Gamabunta. From my experience with the frogs, they're not the most intelligent creatures. I can see how much this means to your congregation you refer to as a hidden village, so listen carefully to this hint, as me telling you how to do it would be considered cheating. When you feel the tug, don't try and go straight to it. Got it? Naruto nodded. In truth, he didn't get it entirely, but he decided to let it go for now. Thanks Fenrir. Catch you round. Later, Naruto. Naruto jumped off Fenrir's head as he poofed out of existence. Naruto looked at his watch seeing it was already 2 a.m. He trudged back to the hotel room, thinking about Fenrir's advice. Evening of the bet. Naruto had been trying to follow Fenrir's cryptic advice, but the more Naruto let the kunai go for, the stronger the pull became. He even let it go for so long that it started giving him a headache. Naruto had tried reading books and scrolls on what it could possibly mean. Finally, It was 8:30 p.m., the appointed time of the bet. He had one last attempt to get it right. He took the kunai and walked out the door, going to the appointed meeting place. He walked past shops, trying desperately to think of something, anything that would help him. He walked past a closed shop that sold all sorts of odds and ends. Naruto saw a new fad that was just coming out. It was called OBTIC fibers. From what he could understand, it worked via a method called total internal refraction. Basically, a beam of light was shown into the end of the semiflexible glass tube, and the dual-layered glass bent the light back to face the other wall instead of just reflecting it like a mirror would. When it struck that wall, it was again refracted back as it hit the wall, repeating the process until it hit the end of the tube, where it gave a rather dazzling display of light. The tube was also filled with the light, and it gave the glass tube a rather strange look. Naruto went back to his thinking until something clicked. He remembered Farrier's words. "Don't try and go straight to it. That's it." Naruto rushed around the final corner to see Tsunade, Shizune and Jiraiya standing there. Tsunade looked rather confident. "One try, Gaki. Let's see what you've got." Naruto threw the kunai at the ground near Tsunade's feet and focused as he felt the tug getting stronger. He let it get stronger until the kunai hit the ground and his headache got bad enough to affect him with tunnel vision, and that's when he noticed it. There was an invisible tunnel of chakra from his position to the kunai, and it was dual-layered. Time seemed to slow down as Naruto activated his body like he would with a shushin and aimed at the wall of the tunnel. He was aware of himself hitting the wall and bouncing off it, straight into the other side. He didn't dare break his concentration until he slammed out of the other side of the chakra tunnel and appeared right in front of her as time sped up to normal and his vision returned to normal. Naruto stared up at Tsunade's look of shock. Tsunade looked from Naruto to the position he was standing when he activated the jutsu, and Naruto saw her expression was mirrored on both Jiraiya's and Shizune's faces. "I take it I did it." Tsunade was unable to form a coherent sentence. "How?" Naruto smiled at her. "My dad was a genius, I'll give him that. I was walking past a shop on the way here that sold all bits and pieces. In the center display was a group of fiber optic cords. I gave it a passing thought until I remembered Fenrir's words. Don't try and go straight to it. I let the kunai hit the ground and my headache got bad enough that I got tunnel vision and time slowed down. That's when I saw a dual-layered tunnel of chakra. Using the theory for total internal refraction with the shushin is what turned the flash of yellow from shushin into a trail of yellow, because the shushin's light takes longer to disappear than it takes for me to move, and although it doesn't give me instant transportation, it lets me move at the speed of light, which is close enough. Tsunade, Jiraiya and Shizune's jaw dropped at the explanation. Naruto smiled determinedly at her. No matter what stands in my way, I will not let it stop me from reaching my dream. I will become the Hokage. Once more, I want to believe in it. Tsunade pulled the necklace off her neck, and placed it around Naruto's as she began to shed tears. Naruto stiffened temporarily as Tsunade wrapped him in a bone-crunching hug. Naruto gasped. "Tsunade, can't breathe." Tsunade let him go as Naruto gasped for breath. Once he had recovered, they went into the bar for something to eat and discuss things, such as Tsunade being the Godime Hokage. A week later. It was 3 p.m. in the afternoon on a day with no clouds in the sky, relatively average temperature for the season and not much happening in Konoha. Well, if you discarded the fact that the entire village was balancing on a knife's edge from the fact that their Hokage was unable to do his duties. The guards on guard duty had been doubled from 2 to 4 after it was found that 2 members of Akatsuki had slipped into the village through a main gate. The ones at the west gate were particularly alert, from the fact that this was the gate they entered through, as well as the guards had been told that the new Hokage would be coming down this road. One of the guards currently on duty looked up to see 4 figures silhouetted against the early afternoon light. One was a child, another was a grown man. The other 2 were female. As they approached, the guard saw who they were and his eyes widened. He stood to attention, as did the other guard when the group stopped at the gate and looked at him. "Jiraiya-sama, the council requested that I send you to them immediately upon your return." Jiraiya nodded. "Thanks." The group of 4 humans and 1 pig walked through the entrance and attracted quite a number of stares. As they got to the Hokage's office, they were admitted in by a pair of Anbu guards. When they stepped inside, the current meeting between the village elders and clan heads stopped and all attention was focused on the group. Naruto smiled lazily at them. Mission accomplished. All looks turned to Tsunade. The village elders thanked him, telling him that his pay for the mission could be collected from downstairs at the mission counter. Naruto raised an eyebrow. This was an official mission. Not that I mind, though. Well, it was a nice surprise. Thanks. Naruto bowed and left the room to collect his pay, and was shocked to see the mission had been rated S. That meant he was now in possession of quite a few thousand Ryu. 50,000 to be exact. If this is the kind of pay for an S-rank mission, Naruto wouldn't mind doing a few more sometime in the future. When Naruto questioned why there was so much, he was told that usually only squads of Anbu took on S rank, not 2 people, therefore, the money was doubled. Naruto accepted it and wondered what to do with his newfound wealth as he walked outside, intent on finding a certain red-eyed brunette and a cyclopean brother of his. 30 minutes later, Naruto decided after searching around and being unable to find either of the people he wanted to, that he'd go to Ichiraku's. He hadn't been there in quite some time as he pushed aside the banners for the shop. Irashe. Naruto waved. Hey old man. The man's eyes widened. Naruto, where've you been? Naruto scratched the back of his head and smiled sheepishly. Ah, sorry about that. Things have been kind of busy. The man smiled and shook his hand dismissively. Don't worry about it. So, what can I get for you today? Naruto thought about it as he took a seat at the counter. Well, I think I'll start with a large, the works, please. The man's eyes widened. Sure you can afford that as well as others. The works costs as much as 3 regular large bowls. Naruto smiled lazily. Sure can. I just got back from an S-rank mission. They didn't say its details were classified, so I guess I can tell you about it while I eat. The man nodded. One works coming right up. Naruto had just finished telling them the mission directives and their time up to reaching the lodging town when the first bowl was served. It wasn't named, the works, for nothing. It was filled to the brim with things like lobster, various types of vegetables including asparagus stalks, onion rings, plenty of meat and an egg as well as many other things. In between mouthfuls, he continued telling both Teki and Ayame what the mission was about, who he had encountered and the bet. By the time he had eaten 2 works bowls, their mouths were practically hanging on the ground. Naruto smiled at them after he finished. Is something wrong? You fought 2 members of Akatsuki and learned Hiraishin no Jutsu. Naruto smiled. Well, I didn't fight either one of them. I never engaged Kisame, and I only distracted Itachi long enough to get Kurenai-chan away from him. Chuki nodded slowly. So you did learn Hiraishin? Naruto nodded. However, Jiraiya-sensei restricted my usage of it. He said I am not to use it until I am officially a Junin or unless my life or the life of one of my friends requires me to use it. Soka. Naruto was about to order a 3rd bowl of something slightly smaller so as not to spend too much money when Chuki put a 3rd works bowl in front of him. Naruto looked up at him questioningly. Old man. He smiled. Brining back a Hokage and saving the life of a Junin from 2 members of Akatsuki is no small feat. Eat up, it's on the house. Naruto nodded. Thank you. After Naruto finished, he paid the fee for the first 2 bowls and left, waving goodbye to them as he left to get back to his apartment. 2 days later, Naruto was given a week's rest from his mission, which he was enjoying to the fullest. On the second morning after they got back, Naruto was enjoying a particularly perverted dream of himself and Kurenai when he heard a rhythmical tapping sound. Tap, tap, tap. Naruto ignored it and continued with his dream. After 5 seconds, the sound came again. Tap, tap, tap. The dream was blurring, right when he was getting to the good part too. Tap, tap, tap. Naruto returned to the land of the conscious and stared at the sunlight streaming in through the window. He could just make out the figure of a messenger bird. Naruto got out of bed and opened the window to let the pigeon in. The pigeon fluttered onto his arm. Naruto opened the canister on its leg and pulled out the message. The bird, its job now completed, flew back to its destination. Naruto opened the scroll and his eyes narrowed. He destroyed the message as was customary, got his ninja gear and used Shushin to get to the Hokage Tower. Same time, at the Hokage Tower. Both Shikamaru and Choji were already there when Naruto appeared inside the office to see that the atmosphere was tense at best. Tsunade looked at Naruto. Naruto, Uchiha Sasuke has left the village. Did he give any reasons? Tsunade sighed and shook her head. The last person to see him before he left was his teammate Haruno Sakura. She apparently begged him to stay, however, he knocked her out. All we know is that he left in the direction of Oto. Naruto looked at Tsunade. Judging by the fact you called us here, there are no Junins or even other Chunin to back us up. Tsunade nodded. Correct, Sasuke could not have chosen a worse or better time to defect, depending on whose perspective you view it from. With our mission intake increased so suddenly, we barely have any Chunin or Junin left available. Naruto, here is your mission. This is an S-class mission due to the fact that you may encounter Kabuto or Orochimaru. You are in overall charge of this mission while your teammates Nara Shikamaru and Akamichi Choji are your direct subordinates. You are to retrieve Uchiha Sasuke before he crosses the border between fire and rice. If you encounter either Kabuto or Orochimaru, you are ordered to forget about Uchiha Sasuke and retreat. Gather any genins you wish to take with you and leave immediately. Will Rock Lee be able to come? Tsunade shook her head. I have only just finished with the operation to receive this news. He will not be able to back you up immediately, however, I will send him out after 2 days. If there are no other questions, then you are dismissed. All three boys left the room and as they ran out of the tower, Naruto turned to Shikamaru. Shikamaru, I need you to get Neji and Tenten. I've worked with them for the past year, so teamwork comes fairly easily for us. Shikamaru nodded. Yokai. Shikamaru broke off from the group and Naruto turned to Choji. Choji, I need you to get Kiba and Shino. We were all friends in the academy, so we can work together well. Sure thing. Choji spilled off from Naruto as Naruto continued to the north gate as he thought about the raven-haired Uchiha. Sasuke, were you that intimidated by my power that you pulled something like this? You fool. Naruto bit his thumb and formed the seals to summon the tracking pack of canines. When he finished the summon, there were a total of 7 dogs of varying descriptions looking at him expectantly. The smallest one, Pakun, looked at Naruto. What do you want, Naruto? I need you guys to split off and try to pick up Sasuke's scent. It's possible that his scent may disappear, but there should be other scents that were with him that will still be followable. Go. The 7 dogs charged off in different directions. All Naruto could do now was wait and hope for the best. 20 minutes later. Shikamaru and Choji arrived about 20 minutes later with the genin they were asked to bring. The looks on their faces told Naruto they had already been informed, at least somewhat, of what had happened. Naruto looked at them seriously. I can tell you've been told some of what's happened from your expressions. We don't have much time, so after we head out, I'll explain everything. However, we can't just rush in there. We need to use speed, but speed without any sort of formation is useless. If any of you have a suggestion, speak up. I'm not the sort of guy to tell you to listen to me or else. Kiba, your sense of smell is a powerful tool. I want you to take point and be our forward scout, making sure we don't run into any traps. Shikamaru, your analytical skills will be netted up front to assess dangerous situations. You will follow directly behind Kiba. Tenten, your ability and knowledge of weapons will help those in front of you should they use any unusual weapons long enough for the rest of us to catch up and help. Next will be me. I will be able to hand out orders from the middle and also provide assistance to both ends just as quickly. Directly behind me will be Shino. Shino, you play a crucial role in this, perhaps more so than the others. You will be our tracer. Should we be separated, I need your tracking bugs to be able to locate the others that have split off and give me reports on them, as well as their conditions. Directly behind Shino will be Choji. Choji, you serve several purposes. I need you to not only be the powerhouse that covers us from behind should we be flanked, but you will also relay orders back to Neji, who will be behind you. Neji, you are our primary lookout for sneak attacks from behind. Your Byakugan will enable us to detect attackers and respond before they get a chance to do anything. Any questions? No one answered, so Naruto stood up. Apart from your positions, I also require you to look in a specific direction for attacks. Kiba and Shikamaru, you need to be looking forward. I will not be looking in any set direction. Tenten, you will be focusing mainly forward, but if you feel it's safe, check left and right. Shino, you will be focusing left. Choji, right, and Neji, behind. As a warning, we have no idea as to what we will face, so don't overlook anything. Even if something seems slightly out of place, warn myself, Choji or Shikamaru, whoever is closer to you. I'm not taking any risks. Before we head out, I need to check your inventories. Show me everything you have. Everyone pulled out their ninja pouches and shuriken holsters. Naruto, Choji and Shikamaru quickly made a mental checklist of everyone's inventory before Naruto reached into his Chunin vest and pulled out 6 3-pronged kunai. Everyone's eyes widened. These are not ordinary kunai. These are kunai that when thrown will allow me to be summoned to your position at the speed of light. I will give one to each of you, however, don't use them unless it's a dire emergency. I will need to be able to give commands to the others. However, if you are about to die, use it. Got it? They all nodded as Naruto handed out the kunai and they looked at Naruto expectantly. Guys, although Sasuke was never close to any of us, he is still a fellow Konoha shinobi. That's why we will get him back. Remember this though, do not throw away your lives to bring him back. Naruto felt a rather weak chakra source behind him and turned to see a crying Sakura looking at him desperately. He sighed. Sakura, what did you say to Sasuke to try and get him to stay? Don't leave anything out. Sakura nodded and told him about the short meeting, and when she told him about even offering to go with him, she felt a sharp spike of killer intent and looked up as she saw Naruto seething at her. If there's one thing I hate more than anything, it's traitors. The fact you admitted to be willing to betray the leaf to go with the center of your obsessive-compulsive disorder makes me wonder why you aren't being held pending execution. Listen well, Sakura, the moment you put that leaf Hittite on, you signed an unspoken agreement to serve your cage to the death. Crushes mean nothing once you put that on. When I get back, I'll make sure you are stripped of your rank for treason. Sakura gasped as everyone looked at Naruto in horror when everyone could hear a howl and Naruto looked in the direction. They've picked him up. Let's move. All 7 shinobi got into formation and charged out the gate in the direction Naruto had indicated, leaving the distraught Sakura behind. About a quarter of a day later. The team had been traveling for around a quarter of a day when both Kiba and Naruto picked something up. Something vile. Shikamaru noticed Kiba's unease immediately. What's up, Kiba? I sense a chakra source nearby that reeks of death and sickness. Naruto nodded in agreement. There's only 2 kinds of chakra like that. Orochimaru's chakra and the chakra of one of the Biju, Nibi no Nekomata. Either way, all of you stay on full alert. I'm upgrading this to a lower or upper double S rank mission, depending on whose chakra that was. If we encounter either of the 2 I mentioned, you are ordered to forget all mission objectives and retreat. None of us stand a chance unless we use Shinjutsu, which I will not allow. Understood. Everyone's eyes widened at Naruto's orders. For him to do something like this meant they were treading very thin ice. The last part was not strictly true. Naruto could pull out the Kyuubi's chakra, but he refused to do that unless there was no other option. Kiba turned around to face Shikamaru. I can smell another dog heading after them. It's not a normal dog. Naruto nodded. That's one of my trackers. Kiba, lead us to him. And let me warn you all of one final thing. I've been ordered that if Sasuke tries to resist capture to the extent he harms any of you severely, you are allowed to use whatever force you deem necessary. They nodded solemnly and sped up, quickly catching up to a small dog which Naruto identified as Pakun. Pakun turned back to the group. So you caught up? Yeah, no mistaking the direction, right? Yeah. Everyone understood what this meant. Sasuke was aiming to use his head start to cross the border before they caught up. If he did, following him would incur the next great hidden shinobi war. Naruto looked at Pakun, who has settled in beside Kiba. Pakun, how far away are we? Pakun turned to look back as they continued jumping between the branches. When I caught the scent, they had a half-day lead. They now have close to a quarter. Also, I've lost Sasuke's scent from the spot where the disgusting chakra came from. However, the four that were with him have continued in the same direction. Naruto nodded and focused on the possibilities. His eyes shot open in realization as he gasped unconsciously, causing everyone to look at him. Naruto's eyes narrowed. Guys, I'm changing the mission directives again. Everyone stared at Naruto. Kiba, being the loudest one of them all, spoke their minds. What the hell, Naruto? How can you just change the mission directives like this? Shikamaru looked at Kiba. Kiba, listen to what Naruto says. I've known him for almost 7 years now. He's not the type of guy to toy with the mission objectives like this without a good reason. Kiba did as he was told and everyone turned back to Naruto. Tsunade sent us in here blind. She had no intel on who our opponents were, their strength or numbers. I have a strong suspicion that the chakra we felt was Orochimaru's. I doubt he would risk come this far with only 3 subordinates. The only way they could gain Orochimaru's chakra is through a seal known as the Cursed Seal. Only 1 out of every 10 people who receive it will survive. Those that do are able to siphon off a small amount of Orochimaru's chakra. Even for those that survive, the side effects are severe. Anko-san also has one. She told me that whenever the bearer uses the seal, it slowly corrupts their mind as well as their body. There are 2 stages to the seal. First stage is what Anko-san has. Sasuke also had a stage 1 seal, but judging by that level of chakra, that is well beyond what a stage 1 should be capable of, possibly even a stage 2. Should the seal progress to stage 2, the bearer sacrifices his own free will in exchange for an incalculable amount of power. The shell we once knew as Sasuke will attempt to kill us on sight, so the mission to retrieve him is over. This is now an assassination mission. However, if you see a chance to retrieve him, do so. Otherwise, kill him. They all nodded slowly as they turned back to increase their speed, pumping more chakra to their legs and feet as they rushed to catch up with their targets. A day later. Everyone was exhausted from the full day of flying through the trees when Choji handed everyone an Akimichi food pill, replenishing their strength almost instantly, and they continued on. With regular updates from Neji, they were certain they were not being followed. They were within range now that even Kiba could clearly pick up their target's scent. Kiba looked back at them. They're slowing. Naruto nodded. Everyone stop. Everyone came to a rest on the branch Kiba had landed on and awaited Naruto's orders. Naruto looked at Neji. Neji, can you focus your Byakugan's range of vision fully forward? Neji nodded as the pulse of chakra-infused light extended out from his face and the telltale veins on the side of his face bulged. Byakugan. Neji looked forward through the trees until he found what he was looking for. Naruto. They're stopping. I can't see Sasuke, but there is a barrel that reeks of evil that is heavily guarded against my Byakugan. There are no traps in the area. There are. Everyone looked at Naruto. They suspect they are being pursued. Neji, look at each of them closely. Neji nodded and focused his Byakugan towards each member. Neji's eyes widened as he looked at the 6-armed one. He has strings of chakra attached to each finger. Each one leads to a web-like structure of chakra that surround them. Naruto thought about it. Are there any near us? Neji nodded and pointed to one right next to Kiba, who froze. Naruto looked at the web and thought over his options. Eventually he pulled out one of the Hiraishin kunai. We have one shot at this. None of you can move fast enough to get in there before they realize it. Neji, I want you to go with Shikamaru and help him get in range for him to use his Kajimane. Neji is the only one capable of seeing those chakra webs. However, Kiba, can you smell them? Kiba concentrated and took a few whiffs of the air around him. Yeah, it's faint, but I can tell when I get close to one. Naruto nodded. Kiba, I need you to go with Choji and flank them from the other side and provide us with raw power if things get out of hand. Tenten, Shino, I need you two to remain here and provide cover the second I get in there. It's a decent warning system, however, I believe he will let the first warning slide if we conceal our presence. Remember, one slip up. No more. Go. Both of Naruto's teammates were led by their person towards their assigned points while Naruto chose a position for the kunai. When Naruto felt his friends get into position, he threw the kunai at a space between them and felt himself being drawn into the chakra tunnel. Tenten and Shino immediately launched an assault while Shikamaru caught them with his Kajimane. Naruto saw that at the end of the chakra tunnel there was a dome of chakra around it with the kunai at the center. Naruto reappeared and ripped the barrel out from under the female Oto Nin and grabbed the kunai to go back. However, he felt a hand on his shoulder. That was some move, brat. But don't think I'm going to let you use it again. Naruto turned slowly to see that the guy with green lipstick and two heads was poking a hand out of his chest and grasping Naruto's shoulder. The man concentrated and Naruto saw Shikamaru's Kajimane no Jutsu retreat and then saw two blue-soaked shuriken fly into the clearing from where Shikamaru was. Naruto's eyes narrowed. The wound had been light, only just enough to break Shikamaru's concentration, as his chakra signature was still strong. The female threw a kunai with several explosive tags at the position Naruto had come from, as well as Shikamaru's and Choji's location. All three parties flew into the clearing from the force of the explosion and landed ungracefully at Naruto's feet. The female of the Oto group smiled at him in a rather malicious fashion. What's this? I threw some kunai into the bushes and got some pieces of shit. Hand over the barrel, kid. The large orange-haired guy looked at his female teammate disapprovingly. To Yuya, women. I don't care, fat ass. Naruto had no choice. He put the barrel onto the ground and backed away from it. His friends were too close to slap an explosive note on the barrel and be done with it. Naruto was aware of the double-headed guy of the four had disappeared and reappeared behind him, giving him a punch to the high back, sending him flying into a tree. Naruto. He's fast. Naruto got to his feet only to be pulled up by the collar and punched several times. How can he be so fast? The man laughed as he let the orange-haired guy pass. This is the guy Sasuke-sama is so scared of. Why would he be scared of such a weak piece of trash? The orange-haired guy picked Naruto up, turned around and threw him against another tree before turning to the others. I feel sorry for you, having such an idiot for a leader. Don't worry, I'll finish him to save you the pain of being led by that piece of trash. What he didn't count on was that Naruto came flying back at him with a kunai in hand and put it to his throat. Don't underestimate others from your first opinions. The six-armed man smirked. You're getting slower than normal, Jirobo. The dual-headed guy reappeared behind Naruto and punched him to his other friends before forming a few seals and announcing his jutsu. Doden Kekai. Dorodomu. Jirobu slammed his palms onto the ground and created two waves of chakra which surrounded in the group in a circle, which raised into a barrier or rock, completely sealing them off. Naruto felt there was something very wrong with this. Naruto turned to Neji. Neji, activate your Byakugan. Neji did so and looked around, his eyes widening. It's absorbing our chakra. Naruto's eyes narrowed. I see. I heard a voice from outside. Hope you kiddies have a lot of chakra. I'm rather hungry. The idea hit Naruto as he smiled. How much chakra do you think you can handle? Everyone turned to Naruto. A lot more than you runts have to offer, that's for sure. Naruto got an evil glint in his eye as he turned to the others. All of you, he's going to drain us dry at this rate. However, I have an idea. I need all of you to back away from me. Shikamaru and Choji's eyes widened. You're going to use that? Naruto nodded. Yeah, what you guys see me do does not leave this dome, got it? They nodded as Naruto shut his eyes and began a low hum, which gradually built into a roar. First gate, Kaiman, Kai. Chakra exploded out of Naruto. However, the chakra wasn't blue. It was blood red, full of hate and killing intent. Everyone staggered back at the sheer force of the chakra and the walls started to strain under the force of the chakra as Naruto. Jirobu had no clue what was going on in there, but the wall was quickly being destroyed from an overload of chakra. Impossible. How can one brat have so much chakra? I've got to let go before that chakra gets to me. That isn't ordinary chakra. Jirobu sprang back as the dome's power source was cut, making it give way under the stress. Or in this case, explode outwards. Jorubo shielded his face with his hands as the rocks bounced off him and he saw what had caused the problem. The trash was emitting some sort of monstrous chakra that was just as evil as Orochimaru's chakra. The chakra died down and the boy dropped to his knees panting. Jirobu looked at the boy in interest. That was some chakra you got there, kid. This could get interesting. Naruto got to his feet and saw that the other three had taken the barrel and left. They didn't have any more time to waste. Guys, we need to move. They're going to cross the border at this rate. Jirobu smirked at the boy. And what makes you think I'm going to let you, trash? Choji stepped out from the line. I am, fat ass. Choji has obviously struck a nerve. Who are you calling fat ass? Tenten looked at Choji dubiously. Can you really handle it by yourself? Naruto looked at Tenten. Tenten, I've known Choji for a long time now. Choji's gentle with his friends, but to an enemy, he's a lot more resolute. Choji pulled out a bag of soldier pills and handed them to Naruto. Go Naruto, I'll take care of him. Choji pulled out a glass medicine container with 3 different colored pills in it. Naruto's and Shikamaru's eyes widened. Naruto looked at Choji. He's got it in the bag. Choji, whatever you do, don't go past the green spinach pill. Choji nodded. Sure thing, Naruto. The rest of you, go. Naruto led the others past the huge guy, who was about to turn around and stop them when Choji charged forward and hurled the big guy over his shoulder. Naruto watched with a pang in his heart as he left his childhood friend behind. All he could do was believe. The others turned to him. Believe in him. Choji had a reason he wanted to stay behind. He will not lose. They all nodded and smiled as they turned back to continue the chase. Naruto whispered to himself. Choji, good luck, my friend. 30 minutes later. Jirobu released his stage 2 form and Choji had just consumed the red pepper pill, catching Jirobu's fist as if it was nothing. You may be 10 times stronger in that form, however, in this form, I'm 100 times stronger. Jirobu noticed butterflies made of chakra appearing from everywhere and attaching themselves to Choji's back, forming butterfly wings made of chakra. Choji turned around and slammed Jirobu in the stomach with his elbow, sending him sprawling. That was for eating the last bite of an expensive meal. Choji walked up to him and slogged him in the face as he tired to get back up. That was for calling me a pawn and a fat ass. Choji walked up to him and stood over him, flaring killing intent as he spoke his next part of the judgment. However, all of that means nothing. What I will not forgive. The chakra drained from his wings and focused into a flaming blue aura around his left fist. As calling my best friend a piece of trash. That's worse than eating the last chip. It's worse than calling me a fat ass or a pawn. It's completely unforgivable. Jirobu's eyes widened. This last blow is heavier than life. Wait, you don't have to rush it. Too late. Choji slammed his fist into Jirobu's chest as the ground underneath the strike buckled under the blow, creating a 10-foot deep crater. As the dust settled, an unnerving calm settled over the battlefield. Choji panted. Naruto, I did it. I beat him. Choji walked away from his dead opponent and trudged slowly after the boys, using willpower alone to move with the spasms of pain racking his body. Choji was vaguely aware of a buttfly leading him forward until it landed on a tree. When Choji got close enough to it to make out the tree clearly with his blurred tunnel vision, he remembered his father's words the day he had met Naruto and began crying. We believe in you, Choji. That must be Naruto and Shikamaru. Come on, we're waiting. Kiba. You will be fine. Shino. Otusan, I've made lots of friends. Choji clutched his chest where his heart was as a particular violent jolt of pain went through his chest and he slumped down, unable to go any further. Naruto, I'm sorry, I won't be able to catch up. I didn't want to call you, because I know how important you are to this mission. Sorry, Naruto. With that, Choji slumped and fell into unconsciousness as the last of his life began slipping away. Just then with the others. Both Naruto and Shikamaru were aware of the chakra butterfly that flew past their heads and stared in disbelief. Everyone caught this and Shino updated them. Choji is severely injured. If he does not receive medical treatment in the next 15 minutes. Don't, Shino. Everyone looked at Shikamaru except Naruto. Choji was both my own and Naruto's first friend, but Choji was closer to Naruto than me. He doesn't need to hear it. Shikamaru looked back to see Naruto on the verge of tears, which he had not seen since Kurenai was stabbed on the bridge in the wave. Naruto shook the forming tears away and regathered his resolve, concentrating on not sacrificing any more precious people. Shikamaru offered Naruto a consoling look before turning around and they continued onwards, trying to steel himself from the pain he was feeling. Several minutes later, Kiba and Pakun had both confirmed that there were no traps up ahead. Neji frowned. That is strange. Why would they not leave traps for us? At that point, Naruto formed a calculative frown. They think we're dead. Everyone turned to Naruto. Neji's eyes narrowed. You mean they wouldn't be expecting us, but their teammate? Shikamaru thought about it. Exactly. This puts us at an advantage. Naruto went ahead of the team, using a henge to approach his teammates. Sound group. Chiyuya looked backwards. Where is that fat ass? He's late. Kidomaru turned around and smiled. No, he's here. Jibaro came out of the bushes. Sakin stared at him. What took you so long? One of the kids had a lot more chakra than he should have. Chiyuya snorted. Whatever. Carry the barrel, fat ass. Chiyuya. Women. Women shouldn't do this, women shouldn't do that. I don't care. Just carry the damn thing, fat ass. When Jibaro nodded but didn't answer, they smirked at him. You're unusually obedient today, Jibaro. Shikamaru had to think fast. Whatever chakra that kid had wasn't human chakra. I don't have the energy to argue after what it did to me. I wonder if that's true. I don't think we can give you the barrel. You're not Jorubo. Shikamaru scowled and dispelled the henge. Not bad for a punk who's only met the guy for a few minutes. You had us going there. Sakin, Chiyuya, take the barrel and go. I'll handle this. The other two used the basic body flicker to escape just as Kidomaru spat a chakra-infused spider web at Shikamaru point blank, which took him to a nearby tree and plastered him there. Kidomaru looked around. He was surrounded. Oh, there are lots of them. This should be fun for a while. Try and keep me amused. Kidomaru was aware of someone behind him and released his chakra strings that held him in their correct position before spitting out a web and catching the white-eyed boy. He proceeded to laugh as he wrapped him up in a cocoon and looked to the left as he saw the boy in the bluish-white trenchcoat sending an army of bugs at him from his shirt sleeves. Kidomaru smirked and jumped away, straight into Tenten's weapon barrage. The weapons, however, just bounced off him as he spat another web and stuck her to the tree. Nice plan. However, it's impossible to harm me with regular or even chakra attacks of that level. His skin turned golden and then crumbled off to reveal some sort of armor made of some sort of chakra-resistant substance. He turned around to see a pair of spinning gray tornadoes flying at him. Gatsuga. He dodged again only to find himself aware of several presences behind him and turned to see Naruto, or more correctly, a bunch of Naruto cage buncheons. Kidomaru smirked as he reappeared behind the clones and produced a ball of the web-like stuff and spat it out and caught the 6 cage buncheons before dropping down to the branch below. HMPH. Cage buncheon. Not bad for someone your age. Well, why don't we play a game? It's called Guess the Real One. Kidomaru chewed and produced 6 golden chakra threads which instantly began hardening as they hit the air. He snapped them off and held one in each hand. First one's the one on the far end. Ha! He threw the sickle-like weapon and it slammed into the clone, getting rid of it. He smirked. Next is the one on the other side. He threw another one and the cage buncheon burst into smoke. Oh, he's a lucky one. Next will be 2. It's a 50-50 chance. He hurled 2 of the objects and burst 2 more cage buncheons. Wow, he's very lucky. This time, I'll only throw 1. Again, a 50-50 chance. He threw it and the second last Naruto burst into smoke. Kidomaru smirked. I've never met someone so lucky. However, this is the end. He threw it hit the last Naruto, which burst into smoke. His eyes widened as he felt three presences coming at him from behind and turned to see another Naruto, Shino and Neji attack him. He understood Naruto, but the other two were a mystery. He aimed a web at Naruto only to have it sliced in half by the white-eyed boy. What the? He turned around to see the others had been freed and were now on the branch behind him. Naruto jumped overhead as Shino and Neji stared at their opponent. That which is made by chakra will be destroyed by chakra. Both our clans specialize in affecting another's chakra flow. Naruto looked at both of them. The two of you can handle him, right? Shino nodded slightly. Yes, out of all of us, we are best suited to fight him. Naruto, get Sasuke back, we're counting on you. Naruto turned around. Whatever you do, don't die. I know you'll win, but I'm not losing any more of you. We won't, Naruto. Hurry, or you'll miss Sasuke. Naruto nodded and took the last remaining members of the team onwards, leaving Neji and Shino to deal with their opponent. An hour later, a pair of golden arrows ripped through the forest, creating widespread destruction and pierced Neji and Shino through the kidney. Both of them stumbled before they just managed to right themselves. This guy was as good an analyzer as Shikamaru and as strong as Naruto, if not stronger. Both of them, with the last of their strength, grabbed the chakra string attached to the arrow and sent their respective weapons either along it or through it. Both of them severed the chakra string and ran lopsidedly at their opponent who was falling through the trees. Both of them unleashed a final attack of Jiyuken strikes or Kikai bugs and collapsed, as did the Oto Nin. There was no energy left for speeches of fate, destiny or how they beat the other. All that was left was to await the sweet embrace of death. Quarter of a day later with the Oto group. Chiyuya was aware of the barrel being thumped from the inside as she halted on a branch. Saken stopped beside her. Is it starting? No, it's too early for it to start. They looked behind them to see three Konoha shinobi facing them. Naruto smiled as he threw a Hiraishin kunai at them and they took the barrel and jumped, smiling. We're not falling for that again, kid. Naruto smirked. I wonder if that's true. Both of them landed and felt the loss of control over their bodies. They dropped the barrel when Shikamaru moved his hands out to the side, which forced them to do so as well. Shit, the barrel. Naruto flew to the branch using Hiraishin and formed several hand seals. Now's as good a time as any. Kaden. Karyu Enden. The Oto Nin stared in horror as the flames hit the barrel and exploded. When it cleared, they felt someone land behind them. Someone very familiar. Kimimaro. Why have you taken so long, Chiyuya? Saken. Orochimaru-sama is getting impatient. The only reason I haven't killed you yet is because you have a mission to complete. Kill them. Their eyes widened as Shikamaru turned to Naruto. Naruto, take Tenten and go after him. Kiba and I will hold these two off. Naruto nodded and motioned Tenten to follow him straight past the two Oto Nins. Naruto turned to look at both of his friends. Don't you dare die, Shikamaru, Kiba. Tenten stared at Naruto. Is it really just alright for you to leave them there? Aren't they? My friends, you have no idea how hard this is for me to sacrifice my friends to get this goddamn SOB back. When I find him, he's dead. Tenten gasped as Naruto's appearance changed. His hair became unruly, his chakra started rolling off him, but it was crimson instead of blue. It radiated massive amounts of killer intent and hatred as Naruto got to all fours and increased his speed. The most surprising of Naruto's changes was when he opened his eyes. They were no longer sapphire blue. They were ruby red and the pupils were now slits. They were the eyes of someone who promised the enemy a long, slow, painful death. Naruto roared as he charged ahead, leaving Tenten to try and keep up with the blonde. In a clearing not too far ahead, Kimimaro turned around to see the boy who was apparently the captain of the team charge him and engage in a brawling style of taijutsu usually associated with a beast. Kimimaro dropped the barrel and focused on dodging the blonde's ferocious volley of attacks. When Naruto thought he had pushed Kimimaro sufficiently away, he disappeared and landed next to the barrel. Take another step, and this barrel will be nothing but ash. Kimimaro stopped his advance. This boy was serious. If the barrel was destroyed before its contents were ready, the contents would die without fail. At that point, a kunoichi appeared and Naruto looked directly at Kimimaro. Tenten, use it. Tenten nodded and pulled out 2 scrolls before performing 4 hand seals. Sorshoryu. The clearing exploded into smoke as a pair of dragons rose into the air and twisted around themselves before revealing the scrolls as she jumped up and began hurling the weapons at the white-haired man who pulled out a sword that was made of bone and began parrying every single weapon. However, once the smoke cleared, Kimimaro saw that Naruto had slapped explosive seals all over the barrel. Mission success. Naruto activated the tags and jumped back as the explosion ripped through the clearing. When it began clearing, Naruto sensed a very evil presence at the explosion's center. Once it did clear, Naruto saw Sasuke, or what he presumed to be Sasuke, logging manically. His features returned to normal and he charged off. Naruto looked at Tenten. Tenten, hold this bastard off. I'm going after him. Naruto used the modified Shushin no Jutsu to get past Kimimaro, leaving the weapons mistress to handle him while he ran after Sasuke. Valley of the End. Shuk jumped off the Shodime statue as Naruto got into the clearing. Afraid of me, Dobi? Sasuke flinched and turned around to sneer at Naruto, who just smiled. That look suits you. Even with that level of power, Itachi would still beat you into the ground. Sasuke led of a fairly large amount of killing intent. What the hell would you know? You've never faced Itachi. Really, after he had his fun with you, he came after me. Even with as much power as I'm using now, he still wouldn't have taken me seriously. You're not even worth his time. Letting you live was a mistake. Sasuke charged at Naruto, who grinned. Hook, line and sinker. People were so easy to manipulate. Shut up, bastard. Sasuke charged him, and Naruto charged back. They grabbed each other's fists and exchanged blows before Naruto punched Sasuke in the face and proceeded to lay into him. After he felt Sasuke got the point, he slugged Sasuke in the gut, sending him spiraling towards the water and formed several hand seals, remembering if he used jutsus Sasuke didn't know, he'd just copy them. Kaden. Gukakyu no Jutsu. The fire caught up with Sasuke just as he hit the water. The resulting explosion and hiss of instant evaporation of the water resounded throughout the area. Naruto let the Kyuubi's chakra subside as he waited for the Uchiha to get back to the surface. Sasuke stared up at Naruto, who looked at him in a fashion that clearly seemed, come on, do something amazing. I'm bored. You know something, Sasuke? Sasuke glared at Naruto. I'm sure you're aware of your beloved fangirls. Sasuke involuntarily shuddered at the thought. That was another reason for leaving Konoha. To get away from the rabid monsters commonly known as fangirls. The fact that you had them is completely your own fault. Sasuke looked up at Naruto in disbelief. Nani? This was going to be fun. Toying with the Uchiha's mind. Normally, he didn't do this sort of thing, but these were extenuating circumstances. Girls dig the angst-filled emo type. They thrive on it. It kicks up a mixture between maternal instincts, obsession and lust. In other words, a completely twisted one-sided relationship. You really are a Dobi. First, you act cool to hide your true feelings after the massacre, and wonder why the girls won't leave you alone. Secondly, you can't deal with the fact that you were beaten in the academy scores by me, and tried to challenge me to a fight, thinking the outcome would be different. Then, at the Chunin exams, you increased the potential number of examinees by 2 times, thinking it'd be cool to point it out. Then, you challenge me to a fight, not even realizing that you never stood a chance, foolish little brother. All this time, Naruto had been using a specialized genjutsu similar to a henge to slowly transform not only his voice, but his body into that of Uchiha Itachi. This genjutsu was far above Sasuke's level of perception, even with his Sharingan. It had taken Naruto almost half a year to master this move, and he was glad he had kept at it. Only another genjutsu specialist would be able to see through the guise. Sasuke was livid. His insanity that had been bubbling constantly under the surface was reaching boiling point. He had to thank Ibiki for giving him psychology lessons. Without the 2 Junins' help, this wouldn't have been possible. All that was needed was one final push. You will never be able to surpass me. I had hoped that letting you live would eventually provide me with a challenge. I see now that even our father was stronger than you ever could be, Ototo. That did it. Sasuke screamed like a banshee as he charged Naruto. Sasuke's power had definitely increased, but he now lacked cunning and the ability to fight properly, relying on his rage and bloodlust to pull through. Naruto saw the cursed seal spread over Sasuke's body. Naruto avoided Sasuke's reckless attacks in a very Itachi-like manner until he saw an opening when Sasuke's head was turned and discreetly replaced himself with a cage bunshin and let Sasuke land a lucky kick as he made the clone explode, sending Sasuke flying into the cliff, shattering a large portion of it. Sasuke fell to the water and stared at the sky as Naruto appeared next to him. Don't you see, Sasuke? You were a fool. I'm sure if you had asked me to help you with your training, I would have gladly agreed. Shut up. Naruto looked down at Sasuke. You've always had a family. You would never know what it's like to lose someone. That's not entirely true. Sasuke looked at Naruto. For the first 4 years of my life, I had no one. Nothing. People hunted me down in mobs, burnt my possessions and tried to assassinate me. For something I had no control over. They took particular relish in attempting to kill me on my birthdays. For the first 3 years, the old man Hokage saved me. However, on my 4th birthday, he didn't come. I was on the verge of death when Kakashi Nissen saved me. I didn't know it then, but Kakashi was my father's prize student. After I got out of hospital, who reluctantly treated me when Nissen swore if they didn't, they'd all be tried for high treason, he adopted me. Even after your family was murdered, you still had people waiting on you hand and foot. It was hard, wasn't it? Not having people recognize you for who you were, but what you stood for. I know exactly how that feels, Sasuke. My first 4 years of life were a living hell for that exact reason. However, while people lavished praise and whatnot on you for being an Uchiha, they attempted to kill me for being something that I hold prisoner. Humans are stupid, shallow and hypocritical, Sasuke. If they suffer a loss, they will seek anyone to blame it on except themselves. However, I put up with the fact that out of every 100 or so bastards, there's one person who is not shallow, is not hypocritical, and not stupid. Those are the sort of people you gather around you. The rest, you push away, in a sense. Ignore them, pay them no attention. Did you ever find someone like that, Sasuke? Sasuke shook his head slightly and Naruto sighed. Believe me, Sasuke, those people are there. You just have to know where to look and what to look for. Personally, I've never looked at you as the venerable Uchiha. I've always seen you as Sasuke. To me, clan names mean little to nothing. Sasuke, I'm giving you one chance and one chance only. Come back. If you come back now, I can explain that Orochimaru brainwashed you and you were not yourself. However, if you leave now, you will never be able to return. What is your answer? Naruto became very aware of a powerful presence, one that far dwarfed his own, coupled with a manacle rasping laughter. There was no mistaking this chakra. Orochimaru. Naruto-kun, you have no idea how much you remind me of your father. It's a pity he died so young. He could have been a great man. Naruto reined in his emotions. He was not going to play this game at the snake's pace. Yeah, he was. No wonder he got the position of Yondaime instead of you. That got the desired reaction. Orochimaru let out a none-too-small wave of killer intent which Naruto had to steel himself against to appear unaffected. Naruto smirked at him. I have no idea why you chose Sasuke, but it's fitting really. An idiot container for an idiot soul. Naruto was aware that he had less than a 5% chance of surviving this encounter, even when he unleashed his full powers. He might as well go down in style. He was aware of Orochimaru standing right next to him. Watch what you say to me, Gaki. Naruto smirked and jumped back. There was no point in running. Orochimaru would just catch up to him. Orochimaru went over to Sasuke and grinned manically at him. Sasuke-kun, watch from up there and I will show you the kind of power I can give to you. Sasuke slowly got up and went to the sidelines to watch the battle. If Naruto tried anything on Sasuke, he would be killed. He should have just killed him, but his heart interfered with his sense of judgment. Orochimaru smirked at Naruto. Regretting something, Naruto-kun. Naruto wasn't going to answer that one, so he looked at Orochimaru. I'm not going to bother wasting useless jutsus on you. Orochimaru smiled. Seems you understand, Naruto-kun. Naruto sighed and channeled a huge amount of chakra. Watch closely, Orochimaru. Here's a jutsu I highly doubt you can ever use even if you learn it. Orochimaru's eyes lit up. Show me then, Naruto-kun. Naruto bit his thumbs and pulled his hands apart and began forming a dual set of 5 mirrored one-handed seals, the only ones he had learnt specifically for this jutsu. Niju Kuchio's no jutsu. Naruto slammed both palms onto the surface of the water and Orochimaru's eyes lit up. A dual summon, how troublesome. Orochimaru bit his thumb and smeared it on his forearm before forming the seals. Kuchio's no jutsu. The clouds cleared and 3 summon bosses appeared. A frog, a wolf and a snake. Sasuke stared in awe. He knew Naruto could summon both, but at the same time. And he had used dual one-handed seals. Not even his 3rd level Sharingan could copy that. Sasuke was wrenched back to reality when he felt the same abnormal chakra coming from Naruto he had felt when he got here. However, this time, it was much stronger. Naruto started channeling Kyuubi's chakra through his system to replenish his completely used-up regular supply. He stared at Orochimaru, and then at Sasuke, and back again. Manda looked up at Orochimaru. Oi, Orochimaru, why did you summon me to such a troublesome situation? There was no answer from said snake Sennin, so Manda let off a hiss of anger. Answer me, Tem, or do you want me to eat you? Surely, you have noticed the 2 in front of us. Are you implying something? Watch your words carefully. I may or may not eat you depending on what you say. Manda, I may be a Sannin, however, 2 summon bosses is troublesome. Manda seemed to consider this before he turned his eyes back to his amphibian and canine counterparts. You had better prepare 100 sacrifices for me. Orochimaru smiled. Sure. Gamabunta took a long drag of his pipe and looked at Manda. I haven't seen those 2 in a while. 32 years to be exact. Fenrir smiled ferally. It's been over 400 since I last met Manda. Fenrir looked up at Naruto on top of Gamabunta's head. Naruto, one of my pups told me about your actions during the event you call the Chunin exams. As of now, your signature in the canine contract is solidified. Naruto nodded. Thanks, Fenrir. No problem. Now, as for you. He looked at Manda. My pups have been asking me what snake meat tastes like for a while now. There may just be enough of you to give them a sample. Manda reared up and gave an angry hiss. Try me, Tem. And so they stared at each other, waiting for some sign to start the battle. It came when an eagle overhead let out a high-pitched shriek, setting all 3 of them into action. Orochimaru formed a hand seal and extended his neck towards Naruto, who formed a half-ram seal. Ninpu. Hari Jizu. Naruto was surrounded completely by a shield of golden spikes and Orochimaru backed off, deciding it would be wise not to turn himself into a fine example of human Swiss cheese. Manda went to wrap itself around Gamabunta when he felt a sharp stabbing sensation in his side and let out a loud hiss of surprise and pain to see Fenrir biting Savali into Manda's side. Manda let go of Gamabunta, who jumped into the air. Gamabunta, give me oil. Gamabunta's cheeks swelled with oil as Naruto formed the seals for a Gokaku no Jutsu. Kaden. Kyukyoku Gukaku no Jutsu. Fenrir smiled and dived underground to avoid the jutsu that was coming. The fireball hit the oil and the entire area exploded into intense flames that Sasuke had to shield his eyes from. When the fire cleared, they saw a molted shell that cracked under its heavy weight. Naruto felt something moving underground. Gamabunta. Below. Nani. The ground directly in front of Gamabunta exploded as Manda's tail tried to stab him, but Gamabunta grabbed the tail and then realized his problem. Manda had used it as a distraction to swallow him from behind. Or, he would have if Fenrir had not come out of the ground in between them and bit into Manda's neck before giving a savage wrench and leaving Manda lying there. Orochimaru, you better believe you're going to pay for putting me in such an unsightly situation. Next time we meet, I'll eat you. Manda poofed out of existence and Orochimaru shot up on top of Gamabunta's head and began laying into Naruto, who had not expected it. Orochimaru landed a sickening punch to his head which sent him flying off and into the head of the Shadaime, much to the chagrin of the remaining summon bosses. Naruto. Naruto hit the statue's head and fell into the water, lifeless. The link tying the two summon bosses to this world grew too weak and they both poofed out of existence. Orochimaru laughed manically. As you can see, Naruto-kun, you are nothing compared to me. Naruto was not at the moment in any state to listen. Naruto was dragged into his mind, or more specifically, in front of the cage. The fox opened its eyes and looked at Naruto. You're weak, brat. Be grateful to me, and that Yondaime Hokage who sealed me inside you. The fox's eyes lit up and Naruto was forcefully ejected from his mindscape. Both Orochimaru and Sasuke felt the chakra coming from Naruto and turned to see a bubbling blood-red chakra begin to overtake Naruto as the chakra forced him to stand up in a manner usually associated with poorly animated corpses. Sasuke, being the fool he was, got too close and Naruto slammed his fist into his face, making Sasuke's skull groan under the pressure before it sent him to the far wall. Naruto groaned in pain as he clutched his chest and then let loose a primal scream of pain, anguish, rage and hatred which chilled Sasuke to the bone. Naruto lowered himself onto all fours and steam came off his hands. Naruto let out a guttural snarl as Orochimaru snickered. There's no point in trying to scare me, Naruto-kun. You still do not have the power to defeat me. Naruto snarled as he got up and released a wave of pure chakra that brought the water up into a wave that overtook Orochimaru. When the water cleared, Orochimaru saw Naruto flying at him, spinning in midair, trying to claw him with several different attacks in the space of less than a second. The last attack was unnervingly close, and the chakra surrounding his hand spirated and moved on its own accord, missing him by less than 5 centimeters. Orochimaru smiled. It seems that the Kyuubi has partial control of your chakra, Naruto-kun. Not surprising since you've realized the first of his tales. Sasuke's eyes widened. Orochimaru was insinuating that the Kyuubi was connected to Naruto. Naruto snarled as he held out his hand and started pumping a massive amount of the Kyuubi's chakra into it, far more than was necessary. Naruto looked up at Orochimaru. Odama Rasengan. Orochimaru's eyes lit up at the name. Oh, the Yondaime's original jutsu, and you've improved it, too. Show me what this new jutsu can do, Naruto-kun. Naruto held onto the Kyuubi-powered Rasengan as he charged Orochimaru. Orochimaru did nothing as Naruto charged forward, and at the last second, Orochimaru grabbed Naruto's hand and threw him into the wall, before producing his sword from his mouth and charged Naruto, running him through and nailing him to the wall. Naruto choked as it pierced his lung and tried to get it out, but he realized that the blade was coated in a highly toxic poison. Naruto's hand dropped to his side, limply, as all he could do was stare at Orochimaru, who was grinning at him evilly. Noticed it, have you, Naruto-kun? The blade produces a highly toxic poison. I'm impressed that even you are alive now. However, you cannot fight any longer. It was true. The demonic chakra needed to be rediverted to healing just to keep him alive. Even the armor quickly vanished and Naruto slumped into unconsciousness. Orochimaru withdrew the sword and let Naruto fall to the ground in a heap, his blood pooling around him. Sasuke had something he had always wanted to see. Naruto's face. Sasuke walked up to him and was about to uncover it when Orochimaru grabbed his wrist. There are 2 Junin coming. We have to leave. Sasuke tried to shake Orochimaru off, but he held firm. Let go of me. Orochimaru held fast and stared at him. If we do not leave now, you will most likely die. Sasuke shut up and followed Orochimaru over the border as a heavy rain set in. 5 minutes later, Kakashi and Kurenai had returned from their missions at almost the same time just over a day ago and were immediately informed of the mission and Sasuke's defection. Both of them looked at each other, completely oblivious to Tsunade trying to hand them their next missions, and they disappeared from the room and ran after Naruto's party. Kakashi had summoned Pakun, who Naruto had dismissed quite some time ago, to help them. When they were close to the border, both Junin's eyes widened at the amount of corrupt and evil chakra being unleashed. Some of it was definitely the Kyuubi, however, the other was far more worrying. It was Orochimaru's. When they got to the Valley of the End, the look that greeted them was horrific. It looked as if this place had been the testing ground for several new super-powered explosive tags. However, that was not what caught their attention. It was a very familiar blood-soaked blonde who had minimal to no chakra signature. Their eyes widened in fear. Naruto. They jumped down the cliff and came to a stop in front of Naruto, checking his vitals. They were there, but he was as good as dead if he didn't receive emergency treatment right away. Not too long after, a squad of medical nins in their trademark beige coats and pants came down and saw Naruto's condition and applied emergency treatment to get him into a stable condition before taking him back home to report the failure to retrieve Uchiha Sasuke. A week later, Naruto had been brought back and rushed to hospital, in a critical condition as had most of Naruto's teammates. Tsunade had personally overseen the majority of the treatments, while Shizune had overseen the others. A week after the battle, people were demanding answers. Where was the Uchiha? It took a week for Naruto to regain consciousness after the battle, and when he did, he found both Kakashi and Kurenai next to him, looking at him worriedly. Naruto tried to open his mouth and speak, but he was unable to. His throat was dry as a desert, which Kurenai seemed to notice because she poured him a glass of water and handed it to him. Naruto took 3 huge gulps and finished off the glass. Arigato, Kurenai-chan. No problem, Naruto. Naruto looked at their expressions and noticed that they had quite a few emotions showing. Anger, sympathy and pain. Naruto looked at each of them. What happened while I was out? Kakashi sighed. The villagers are demanding answers, and are on the verge of blaming you for the failure. Naruto's eyes narrowed. What did they expect me to do? Kill Orochimaru by myself and bring Sasuke back while I was at it? Kurenai sighed and sat back. Those of us who know you personally, Naruto, know what happened. However, to the villagers, nothing is more important than their precious Uchiha. Tsunade asked to see you as soon as you were conscious. She didn't sound too happy. Naruto looked at Kurenai. Nani? Kurenai shook her head. It's a long story. I guess you should get changed and go see her. Naruto sighed and got out of bed. Due to the Kyuubi's marvelous healing abilities, whenever Naruto was wounded, the moment he woke up, he was pretty much in top shape again. Kakashi and Kurenai left the room to give Naruto some privacy while he changed. Once he had donned his usual gear, he walked out of the room to see his team there, looking at him. All of them had some sort of injury that had still not healed. Such as Tenten had her right arm in a sling, Kiba had medical tape wrapped around his midriff, while the others sported some kind of sign of being injured. Naruto nodded at them as they got up and followed him to Tsunade's office in the hospital. Once they got there, Naruto opened the door when he was waved in by the single Anbu guard. Tsunade looked up from her desk. Her eyes implied she was tired, but there were no other visible signs of it. Whatever that genjutsu was, it was good. The team stood in front of Tsunade, who looked at them. Give me a full report. Naruto proceeded to tell Tsunade and Shizune, who was by her side, absolutely everything. When Naruto finished, Tsunade and Shizune were gobsmacked. Naruto glared at her. Next time you send us on a suicide mission against one of your former teammates, give me some warning. Tsunade slowly nodded. What we were told by the medical team was very different. Do all of you agree with Naruto's account? Every one of them nodded. Naruto had told the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Tsunade sighed as she unconsciously massaged her temples. Naruto waited for her response. Tsunade finally looked up. I have no doubt that you are telling the truth. The majority of the villagers will be sated with the fact that you tried to take on Orochimaru by yourself. However, some of them will still blame you. Those few may try and convince the others that you were directly responsible for the loss of the Uchiha. Now, one final matter. Your comments to Haruno Sakura. Naruto glared at her and ground out his words. She's not fit to be a kunoichi. Her crush has exceeded the limits of what can be described as a crush and has progressed to obsessive-compulsive disorder of the highest degree. She admitted to being willing to betray the leaf just to go with Sasuke. I'm officially requesting she be stripped of rank and ninja status for treason and insubordination. Tsunade nodded slowly. Would you be willing to provide evidence should it be necessary? Naruto nodded. He wanted her gone for good. Even Ino understood when a crush had gone out of control and had the sense to stop. Apparently, Sakura didn't. He hated people who would betray their village for such trivial reasons even more so than people who betrayed it for good reasons. Tsunade sighed as she looked at Naruto. Naruto, Jiraiya has asked that he be allowed to take you on a 2.5-year training mission. Everyone's eyes widened, none more so than Naruto's. What? You expect me to just up and leave for 2.5 years after something like this? Tsunade sighed. She could feel one monster of a headache coming on. Lucky she had her emergency medicine laying in a drawer of the Hokage desk. It's for that exact reason that Jiraiya has requested to take you. He feels that you could easily become the next Hokage, however, you will not be able to learn everything you need to hear. If you accept, this will be classified as a compound SS rank mission. I cannot tell you more than that unless you accept. Naruto sighed. He would have to leave his best friends and senseis to go on a training mission with the living god of all perverts. If he didn't, he would be free from attempted corruption of becoming a super pervert for quite some time. However, he would not be able to become Hokage. If he did go, he would be able to learn from possibly the only seal master left in the world and become Hokage. However, if he did go and was turned to the dark side, Kurenai would never want to go out with him, assuming their relationship even got that far. Decisions. Shikamaru and Choji raised an eyebrow at Naruto's calculated look. He didn't think something over this seriously for long unless there was major repercussions for both choices. Naruto smiled lazily as he looked at Tsunade, reaching his decision. I'll go, but I want a week to do whatever I want within the limitations of the law before I leave, no compromises. Tsunade smiled. It was a reasonable request, given the suddenness of it. She quickly concluded the meeting and called Jiraiya in so they could discuss the mission. Several hours later, a tired and hungry Naruto walked out of the Hokage's office, intent on getting home, stuffing himself and going to bed. However, fate would have it that one very angry pink-headed Kunoichi would storm up to him and began berating him, along with a group of friends. Naruto smirked under his mask. How typical of a regular human. Try and seek safety in numbers. Naruto waited until Sakura had run out of breath, not listening to a word she said. Well, what do you have to say for yourself? Naruto smiled. It was time to take Her Highness down several hundred pegs. How well do you think you could have survived single combat against Orochimaru? Sakura didn't understand. What has that got to do with it? Answer the question and you'll find out. Sakura's eyes narrowed. Why should I? Naruto smiled. Time to pull her down from the clouds. I thought so. He wouldn't even have to use a ninjutsu, genjutsu or straight taijutsu attack to kill you. Just some killer intent and a kunai to the head. That remark got a far better reaction than Naruto had aimed for. He pressed his advantage. So, considering he wouldn't even take you seriously, how far do you think I could have gotten against him when I faced him in single combat to retrieve Sasuke after facing all 5 of his personal bodyguards? Sure, I landed some blows on him and defeated Manda, King of the Snakes, but I got my rear end handed to me. It was a miracle I even survived a stab through the lung with a sword that produces poison strong enough to kill an elephant with a deep wound. With that, Naruto strolled off, acutely aware of the dumbstruck looks from the mob of girls behind him and the pathetic amount of killer intent that would be more appropriately labeled extreme hatred from the pink-haired woman leading them. Normally, he wasn't like this, but the fact that people were being ignorant and once again blaming him for something that was well and truly beyond his control struck a very deep and sensitive nerve. A nerve that brought out the darker aspects of him. The interrogator within that enjoyed toying with people's minds to see how badly he could break them with just words. He had little doubt that the Kyuubi played a direct role in that somewhere himself as well. Naruto shook the fact from his mind as he made his way home, making sure he was not being followed. He could not have the location of his and Kakashi's home revealed to the general public lest they get rowdy and attempt to destroy it, or worse, the entire apartment complex. Inside the apartment, Naruto opened the door to see more than he had bargained for. He really was just looking for something to eat and a sleep, not all of his senseis in the room, including Iruka and the Arrow Sennin. They all looked up as the door opened. Naruto groaned. Guys, I'm not leaving for another week. You didn't have to. Iruka got up, looking rather distressed. Naruto, that's not what we're here about. Why did you fight Orochimaru? You could have been very easily killed if it wasn't for Kurenai-san and Kakashi-san. Naruto took an empty stool and pulled up. Iruka-sensei, if I had tried to run, how far do you think I would have gotten before Orochimaru caught up to me? Iruka, though, about that, he had a good point. Iruka-sensei, if I had run, I wouldn't have gone 500 meters before he caught me. If I had used Hiraishin to get out of there, assuming I had enough kunais to do so, I would have collapsed from chakra exhaustion pretty soon after leaving. It's not an S-rank jutsu for nothing. If I had, he could have killed me unopposed. Iruka sat back down. Naruto was practically falling asleep on the chair, which they all seemed to notice. Kurenai sighed. Naruto, I think you had better get to bed. You can hardly sit let alone talk. Yeah. Naruto got up and trudged to the bedroom like a zombie looking for sustenance. 2 days later. On the first 2 days of his week he was required to give evidence at Sakura's trial for treason, using his entire team as witnesses to support his claim, ending up in her being stripped of her ninja rank and privileges. The next day, he was walking with Neji, chatting about things in general when both boys had seen an older version of Sakura, most likely her mother screaming obscenities at him like a banshee as she charged him, waving a kunai in the air. I can see why Sakura had no skill in the academy. Naruto knocked the kunai away and pulled her arms behind her back. This was getting out of hand. Naruto couldn't have had better luck having a Hyuga, and a friendly one at that, as his witness. Even a branch family member held a lot of power in the community. Neji was no exception. Soon enough, people had crowded around, demanding what was going on, and Neji told them that Naruto had been attacked and only used self-defense to protect himself. When one man tried to question Neji, he activated the Byakugan. Do not question me. In matters that concern the law, Hyugas speak only the truth, even if it is their own kin at stake. Back off. Everyone had done so, and after conveying the message to a Chunin who was patrolling nearby, the elder Haruno was taken into custody. Attacking a village ninja was an offense usually met with severe punishment. However, it was never the death penalty unless the ninja had been killed in the attack. Naruto and Neji had kept walking, the mood spoilt. No wonder the Haruno were never ninjas. Naruto pushed it to the back of his mind and went off to say goodbye to Guy and his genin team. Next day. Naruto had taken the next day to spend with Asuma and his genin team. Asuma decided to test Naruto to see how far he had come with his trench knife combat skills. First to draw blood was the winner. Hinata, Kiba and Shino watched in awe as Naruto went toe-to-toe with their Junin instructor, and they both danced around each other's strikes with practiced ease, both of them trying to find an opening in which to attack. Naruto could tell Asuma was taking this as he would a fight with an enemy. Naruto realized that this wasn't just a spar, this was a test. The test to see if Naruto had surpassed his sensei in his chosen form of combat. Naruto kept it up for a good 15 minutes, sweat drenching both of them. Naruto decided to try and finish it by waiting for Asuma to try a right hook at his head, and blocked it with one knife while Asuma tried to strike Naruto's chest with his other knife, which Naruto blocked with his free knife. Both of them struggled to break the other's attack, their chakra-extended blades straining against each other. Naruto had to time this perfectly, otherwise, either or both of them could be seriously injured. Naruto brought his knife that was stopping the one from hitting his head and brought it down and then up, making a shallow slice at Asuma's forearm as he ducked and rolled away before either of Asuma's knives could touch him. Asuma jumped back as well, and they stared at each other. Naruto's eyes widened as a cut appeared in his mask with blood dripping down from the cut that was nothing worse than a bad paper cut. Kiba and Hinata gasped. Asuma-sensei won. Shino shook his head. Look closely. Both Shino and Hinata saw that their sensei's forearm was bleeding from a very similar cut as the one on Naruto's face. Asuma smirked while Naruto smiled. A draw. Wonder what that means in terms of the test. Kiba and Hinata's eyes widened for different reasons. Kiba spoke his point of view. Test. That was a test. Hinata nodded. Anyo. It's often a way for senseis to assess if their student has successfully passed their training and has become a qualified fighter of their chosen art. Shino nodded in agreement. If the student manages to land a hit on the sensei, they pass. If the sensei hits the student, they have not yet completed their training. I am unsure as to what a draw means. Asuma smirked. You've come far in 8 years, Naruto. I wasn't taking it easy on you at all and you still managed to bring this match to a draw. You pass. Naruto nodded and bowed to his sensei and Asuma returned it. Both of them got up and shook hands before they came over to sit with the 3 genin with some rice balls that Hinata had prepared before she left home for the team. There was plenty for everyone, even Naruto. They munched away happily in the shade of a tree as they talked over everything and nothing at the same time. Next day. Naruto had spent half the day with Ino, who was rather despondent to the fact that she had no team. However, she was smart enough to see that Naruto was not at fault for any of it, and had handled the situation as any other proper shinobi would have. For the second half of the day, Naruto had spent it with Ibiki, getting some psychology tips as he was teased mercilessly about Kurenai, which he blushed insanely at considering how vivid Ibiki had been with descriptions of what Naruto would do to Kurenai if he had the chance in front of countless Anbu before Ibiki led Naruto to his office. Shortly after they got there, an Anbu knocked on the door and called Ibiki to something, saving Naruto from further embarrassment. Ibiki walked out the door and turned back, saying to Naruto he would read it in a minute. Ibiki left the room and Naruto saw what looked suspiciously like something pink and fluffy sticking out of Ibiki's desk drawer, and he couldn't but check it out to confirm that it was indeed the leg of a stuffed fluffy pink elephant. Naruto smirked, trying to hide his laughter as he took each of the animals out and placed them around Ibiki's desk, mostly concentrated around the nameplate which identified him before he took out his camera and snapped away at Ibiki's little collection of the most adorable stuffed animals he had ever seen. He felt Ibiki approaching so he shoved the camera back in his pocket and the animals back in the drawer, closing it. Still trying to contain his laughter as he thought up ways of getting payback for the comments about Kurenai. Ibiki looked at Naruto in a completely serious tone. Naruto, something's come up. I'll have to cut our time short. Naruto nodded as he left Ibiki's office going around the corner and broke out into howls of laughter at the absolute stupidity of the notion that the badass Ibiki had a collection of fluffy stuffed toys. If news of this got out into the Anbu and the terrorism and interrogation squad, Ibiki would be paid back tenfold for what he had heaped onto Naruto in front of them and he would be considered a hero among them. Naruto went straight to a trusty little 1-hour photo printing place he had used before many times, asking for triple copies and came back an hour later before he took the copies with him. He hid the negatives and went back to the terror and interrogation headquarters, being stopped by the guard. Naruto, Ibiki-san's left. If you. Naruto held up a picture of the collection and the man stopped mid-sentence, before he began a slight chuckle which turned into full-blown laughter. Naruto smiled at the man who smiled straight back at him. Seems the tough as nails Ibiki has his softer side too. Remind me never to get on your bad side. Go in and ask for Anko-san. She'll be able to help you. Naruto nodded. Thanks. The man shook his head as he burst out into laughter, causing a workmate to look at him. When did guard duty get so funny? The man looked at him colleague. Since a certain blonde found out Ibiki's secret. What? The man smirked. You'll find out soon enough. Next day. Ibiki had arrived back to find that everyone was smiling at him. He knew something was up when Anko saw him and burst out laughing. Mind telling me what's so funny here, Anko? Anko pointed to the wall behind Ibiki who turned and saw what she was referring to. Your collection, that's what. Ibiki went silent as all of the Anbu chucked as they saw him staring at the picture. Ibiki turned back to Anko, clearly very unhappy with the way things had turned out. Who did this, Anko? Anko smiled within. I know something you don't, look. Let's see, he was about 5 foot tall, an excruciatingly annoying smile, blonde hair. Naruto. Anko laughed again as Ibiki stormed off to find the blonde in question and teach him a lesson he wouldn't soon forget. Next day. Naruto had decided to spend the second last day with his teammates as they all went to the BBQ restaurant and ate to their heart's content while they chatted. At the end of the meal, Choji had to be admitted to hospital because he had eaten too much, much to Naruto and Shikamaru's amusement. Once they had dropped Choji off at the hospital, Naruto and Shikamaru decided to play one last game of Shugi that lasted well into the evening, ending in Shikamaru pulling a number Naruto had not been expecting. However, the game had been very close. Naruto bid Shikamaru good night as the lazy pineapple-haired Nara waved goodbye and left Naruto's apartment. Day before leaving, Naruto had spent the last day with both Kakashi and Kurenai. Kakashi had led Naruto into his room and opened a drawer that Naruto was not permitted to touch. Kakashi pulled out a rather long katana ahnd Naruto saw on the pure white scabbard it had the kanji for White Fang. Naruto looked at in disbelief. "Nisan, is that your dad's?" Kakashi smiled. "Yeah, it's my dad's sword, I want you to have it." Naruto was gobsmacked at this. "Nisan, I can't take this." Kakashi smiled at Naruto. "He would have wanted you to have it." Naruto nodded slowly and accepted the katana and savored it. He had a limited amount of training in kenjutsu with Tenten, enough to get him through a fight with a decent street thug, but not enough to get through a fight with anyone better than that. Naruto strapped the sword to his back with the should strap that was attached to the katana's scabbard as he hugged Kakashi. "Thanks, Nisan." "No problems, Ototo." They separated and left the apartment together to go and get something to eat at Ichiraku's. That afternoon, Naruto had seen Kurenai walking with Asuma, and when they saw each other, Asuma smiled and whispered something just loud enough for Naruto to hear. "I'll leave you and your body friend to it." Kurenai tried to send Asuma to the 5th level of hell for a few minutes but he'd already body flickered away, leaving a very emberized Naruto and Kurenai to deal with it. They both tried to smile at the other, but that just made things worse. Naruto looked up at his sensei and crush. "Anyo, Kurenai-chan, I'm going to miss you." Kurenai smirked. He may be a hardened ninja, but he still had a soft spot as did all people. "I know, I'll miss you too, Naru-chan." The useage and emphasize of Naruto's nickname made him get rather bashful due to the lack of its usage in recent times. Kurenai hugged Naruto to her, making him go as red as a tomato remembering all of the perverted things Ibiki had soiled his mind with. Naruto looked up at Kurenai's face, only to see it between her rather pronounced assets that were between their faces, which caused him to look straight back down. Kurenai smiled at him. "Naru-chan, if you resist Jiraiya's attempts to turn you into a pervert while you're away, I'll give you something special when you get back." Naruto blushed even more if it was possible at the possibilities of what Kurenai could have implied. Naturally, the more perverse thoughts came first. "I failed already." Kurenai seemed to sense this and smiled inwardly. "That test should prove whether or not you really are more of a man than those three, Naruto." Kurenai leaned down and planted her lips on his forehead, causing Naruto to cease all thoughts and actions before passing out, much to Kurenai's amusement. Kurenai picked him up and took him back to Kakashi's apartment where she put him on his bed and smiled at him before leaving. Early next morning, Naruto had come to the south gate, expecting to see Jiraiya and his Junin senseis as well as his two teammates. However, he was surprised to see everyone there bar the two former members of Team 7. Naruto looked shocked for a second before he approached them, receiving last words and pats on the backs from friends as well as advice from each of his Junin senseis. Naruto was about to leave before Kiba called out to him. "Oi, Naruto." Naruto looked back at him. Nani? What's it like under that mask?" "What, you want to see what's under my mask?" "Yeah. Well, you should have said so." Ino looked at Naruto hopefully. "So, you're going to show it to us?" "I don't mind." Suddenly, everyone except the 4 Junins in the group had gathered around as close to Naruto as they could. Their eyes said it all. They were desperate to see what was under it. Naruto slowly reached his hand to his face. "Here goes." Naruto was almost aware of everyone's heart beating faster as he hooked his fingers under his mask. "Under the mask is..." Naruto could almost hear them repeating the question in their minds in a strange unison. Naruto ripped down the mask to reveal Nada Masuku, Osoreru Korega. Everyone stared at it before they recoiled, and a strange genjutsu fell over the area where everyone lost their color, turning into gray silhouettes of themselves as they cried out in confusion while the background turned yellow before they fell to the ground in an uber-facefo. Naruto scratched the back of his head and laughed nervously. Guy went on about hip attitudes, Asuma laughed, Kurenai chuckled, and Kakashi smiled at the fact that Naruto wore another mask underneath his main one. Naruto waved at them as he poked the perverted hermit, who got up and followed Naruto out of the gates, waving back at the others who were just starting to recover. Naruto laughed as he heard Kiba's enraged voice call out at him. What the hell was that? Naruto paid no attention to him as the pair left on their 2.5-year journey.